next financial year. Not so much anymore. Because through the course of the year, all the ministries, all the departments continue rolling out the policies. We get a fair perspective on a real-time basis of where the country is going, including major projects and inaugurals. But one major event that took place a few years ago has also made this exercise limited as far as you and I are concerned to what happens with direct taxes, and that of course was GST, which now happens under a separate GST council, which of course keeps meeting, and then we keep having conversations on how to tax popcorn. Now, in the larger scheme of things, a budgetary exercise is going to tell you the health and the state of the country's finances and what the thematic priorities of governance are. There is a limit to which a government and a finance minister have flexibility, because the salaries have to be paid, the projects that have already been announced in the years past have to be completed and allocated. There can be an up and down, and the larger scheme of infrastructure, on defense, on the import of oil, in meeting our debt requirements, in meeting our interest payments, those are pretty much all static figures. But amongst the 30-40 lakh crores that are to be allocated over the course of the next couple of hours, what are the themes? And for many people watching the broadcast, there is a self-interest in this. And what is the self-interest? The self-interest is that the nation's progress has to be held on the shoulders of the people who pay taxes. The people who earn salaries first pay the tax, then every time you go and purchase something, you pay more tax. Oftentimes we find in the history and progress of nations that the people who are the richest and own companies, they own nothing to their name. They have neither house nor car, because everything is being put on a balance sheet somewhere and depreciation is being written off. So what happens to the people, the ordinary Joe who's earning a living, middle class time? I think an idea certainly whose time has come. So we had a tax rejig last year. What's going to happen this time around? Let's open up this conversation. Joining us on the broadcast, we have the former Union Commerce Secretary, Dr. Ajay Dua is with us. Sumit Peer is joining us. Vishwanathan Iyer is joining us this morning. And General Dwivedi is joining us this morning as well. Ajay Dua, let me start with you, sir. So, there's X that can be done now in a budget. It's not what it used to be 20, 30 years ago. But for a lot of people, okay, including you and me, it becomes a solitary item. What happens to income taxes? Because, all the other taxes are anyway out of the budget framework. What's your gut feeling today, sir?
I think the budget will be in response to what we have seen in the economy in the first half of the last year. The budget can't possibly ignore that, though the economic survey, and as you know, Rishabh, we've seen one of the longest economic surveys of 480 pages released yesterday, very comprehensive, though yet I would say it recognizes the fact that in the first half of last year, we had, due to very valid concerns, geopolitical situations, the global uncertainty, plus the capital investment both by the government as well as the private sector slowing down. What has been said all along, the economic survey captures that. So I expect some of the issues which have been raised as the causes, what was, as I said, what was earlier being mentioned, but now recognized by the government through this official document, and no longer is the government trying to say that it is a blip which will automatically disappear, as was tried to explain. So I expect government to be very responsive, and two things, if I might say, before I give the floor to the others. One, the government will be addressing the concerns of the lower middle class, which is the largest category in India, which means salaried, which come within the 2.5 crore people who pay the taxes or who are in the tax fold, and that's the meager number. Less than 2% of the entire 140 billion people in India pay the taxes. Their concerns I am expecting to be addressed, and the address is going to be how to put more purchasing power in their hands so that the aggregate demand increases and that excuse of overcapacity in the economy, which the private sector has been feeling or talking about, that will get met to some extent when there is greater demand. Number
Okay.
one. Number two, I expect that the government, while continuing with most of the schemes which they have launched in the past and all have to be given time to prove their worth, the government is going to be also looking at the rural sector, particularly agriculture, because that's being realized increasingly that its share must go beyond 15 to 16% if 45% of the population of the country continues to be in rural areas and highly dependent upon agriculture.
Okay, so let's pick this up. For perspective, ladies and gentlemen, when the first union budget was put together, we're talking about 1947-48. The government expenditure was 197 crore rupees. Nirmala Sitharaman will sit today and probably announce an expenditure of about 50 lakh crore rupees. Now, let me get Sumit Peer on this. Sumit, it is now a truism to say that we are stuck in an odd scenario that there are whole swaths of the Indian public that do not pay direct taxes. Agricultural income is exempt from all direct taxes. Now, that's fine, but the problem happens when there are pretty well-to-do, pretty wealthy people who will find through some pretext not to pay tax. Now, those can be a set of people who, let's face it, are flying around in private jets, but they own nothing. Everything's on the company balance sheet and the company writes off all expenditure. So, you have a private jet, even the jet fuel is expenditure. Everything that you're writing off in terms of percentage of depreciation every year. And we find that the amount of taxes paid is pretty little. Then we find, of course, the rest of us who have to first earn a salary. So now we've done the mathematics. If you earn 100 rupees and then you pay 20-30% tax on it, then every time you go purchase something and you pay another 18% tax on it, think of what you end up actually having from your hard work. Sumit Peer, this is a going frustration. It's got nothing to do with this government, previous government. It's an ongoing frustration. But is it being realized in the halls of government?
Rishabh ji, good morning to you and all the fellow panelists and all the viewers. Pleasure always to be on the special broadcast like this. Well, I want to put a few things in perspective, sir. The first and the most important thing is, if you look at the receivable side of the government of India last budget, right? The number one contributor is income tax, though we might argue only 2 crore people pay income tax, but that is the biggest where the money of the government comes from, followed by GST, followed by corporate tax. So only so-called 2 crore people paying income tax in India is more than the corporate tax and GST collected. That's also a reality. So, and out of that, the salaried class is the person, or the middle class is the person who gets squeezed most. Now the challenge is also the same, is like, you have 42 crore people which are in middle class today. It is supposed to go to 60 crore. It is almost 31% of the people who are typically going to vote because they are all adults and earning. It's a big electoral mass which you have to capture, and this class believes in when things are done for them, not promised for them. So what I expect, looking at all those things and looking at their aspirations, first, agriculture has to be brought up, what Dua Sahab rightly said, there's no doubt about it. Second thing is that, up to 10 or 12 lakhs, we expect that, they should be given some respite, they should be given some kind of a thing. I am hoping that the old tax structure, which had this lot of jugards, I would call them now today, ye bill dal do, wo bill dal do, that will be given off. Because Modi ji has promised less tax. For less tax, you need very simplified tax structure. You can't have those 50 exemptions and all. So I think the old tax regime will go. Even when there's a new tax regime which is being talked about, then only you will be able to give some standard deductions. And the thing is, Rishabh ji, people in this country always crib about GST. I have a suggestion to make about the GST. Look, with GST, you can, now you have AI, you have software, so a lot of technologies which are available there. You can introduce a collateral free lending based on your GST collected or paid. So it's like a salaried person can, like you and me or somebody can get, credit cards worth 20, 30, 40 lakhs if you have that kind of a salary. But for a business owner, if you can use a GST paid as a way to calculate how much of collateral free lending can we do to them. But for this, for MSMEs and SMEs can be a big revolution. So with these things, you have to manage your fiscal deficit. You have to look at the budget. You have to put money with Rishabh on the defense now, because you look at the hostilities increasing around us. You look at the challenges increasing around
Yes.
us. So it's not easy.
So I'm going to pick on that, but the biggest, of course, challenge is everything is fine if the country is growing at a healthy pace. And as Ajay Dua mentioned, we have to be slightly cautious of that, because we've had an economic survey yesterday, and the economic survey is telling you things are relativistically growing great. So as you compare it to the rest of the world, we are going to be pretty much the fastest growing major economy. But that is not good enough. We have to be nearer the 10% mark, not nearer the 5% mark. And that has to be a long-term trend. But we are putting perspective. So let me get perspective in. General Dwivedi, before I get into defense expenditure and all the other matters with you, just as a human being, as a person who's earned a salary, earns a pension, here's a reality check, right? 50 lakh crores is what Nirmala Sitharaman has got to play with, of which around about 20 lakh crores come from direct taxes, of which 50%, so 10 lakh crores come from individual taxpayers, the balance 10 come from corporates. So 25% of the union budgetary expenditure is paid for by less than 2% of the people. General Dwivedi, now that's a duty that people are fulfilling, but after a point, what can be done to look after these people?
Well, Rishabh, I think some of the issues have been covered by the previous panelists. There is actually what we can see is a lopsided tax collection, because 2% of the people are paying taxes, and the larger portion of the people are not paying taxes. So this is one aberration that needs to be corrected. Just as a case in point, people like me who are in the gig fraternity, when we go for even taking a class or a lecture, we are supposed to pay even 10% of GST on those kind of issues. So therefore, the point is that I think this aberration needs to be corrected. We need to widen the tax net, especially because I would say that, like agriculture, there are big farmers who are owning hundreds of acres of land, and they are also being given free electricity, all subsidies. I think this needs a serious look, because you can't keep squeezing only 2%. And unfortunately, they say good economics doesn't make good politics. Now here comes the politics, because vote bank politics is one of the issues. Why they don't want to touch certain segment of people.
No,
So
but
think,
General Dwivedi, I know some of those farmers who drive a Mercedes and then pay no taxes, but is the middle class not a vote bank for anyone? That nobody actually genuinely care?
Actually, middle class, is the one which gets squeezed maximum. It is like an orphan class, because unfortunately, in middle class is not the class which actually impacts the voting or the election outcome. Now that is where the whole situation lies. So once we are able to juggle, this tax base, and until we don't widen it, you see, there is middle class, and the 2% of those people who are paying taxes are going to squeeze. I have one point. See, when we are paying taxes, we should also get incentives. But there's no incentive. If I am paying a tax, there should be certain amount of incentive should be there. Like Sumit, we had also touched upon the GST dimension. I think all those who are paying taxes must have some incentives. Whether these incentives are direct or indirect, but until you incentivize people to pay taxes, this aberration is not going to be corrected, Rishabh.
Okay, so how do you incentivize people? You incentivize people to pay taxes by having lower taxes. And that's the lesson we've learned from the 70s in India, where you could pay income tax up to 70%, 80%, 90%, and therefore people did not pay taxes. That's a bit different now. So again, I'm trying to put perspective to this. We look at about 8 crore income tax returns that are filed every year. That's imagine accounting for about 6% of India's population. So of that, less than half actually pay taxes. Now that's because the tax slabs have genuinely incrementally gone up. So people are filing income tax return, but their next net tax receipts are nil. The system of paying taxes has become a lot easier, direct taxes. When I filed my tax returns this year, I got my refund within 15 minutes. I couldn't understand what happened. It was a very small amount of a refund, but tax return filed, stepped out, got a message, your tax refund has been credited. So the system of paying taxes has become a lot easier. But Alok Mehta, the genuine grouse and frustration remains. And the frustration is on this point that less than 2% of the people, and that's all of us, are paying for 1/4 of what Nirmala Sitharaman is hoping to earn this year.
Very good morning, Rishabh. I think this is the main problem about even the woman. You see it in the middle class, the woman, if you get some fixed deposits, because when you are getting some salary or salary of the family, and if you have some fixed deposit for the future, especially for the elder people, I would like to mention the number of women, they always cry for this, that again they have to pay on their fixed deposits. You see this kind of tragedy. First you pay from salary, when you deposit something and then you get some interest is going down. And agriculture land, you are talking about only the farmers, big farmers. We are talking since last 50 years about this. But now you see the farmers who are also farmers. You know, number of, with all regards, because there are our guests also sometimes, the legal experts and even the medical practitioners. I visited number of people and I know the friends also in a legal circle who just say, okay, this is my agriculture income. They get, and still you go to doctors, physicians, normal doctors in the middle class or the poor people, they ask money by cash, even in our digital revolution. If you are ill and you are going to doctor and they say, okay, you have to pay 500 rupees or 200 rupees, you have to pay. These kind of people, they are also not paying tax. This is the tragedy, because the system, when you have digital revolution, at least for the agriculture also, if you have earning more than 50 lakhs, at least they should have tax, or even 1 crore. You see, I know people who will not pay single pie and they have big lands, including few top editors of India I know who are now retired, but they have their own company and they are earning also by land, farming, and they say, okay, we have the agricultural income. These guys, that's why I'm saying it's a self-criticism should be there. And I think the Nirmala Sitharaman ji is from academic background. She also must be knowing JNU pension. Almost the whole budget goes to the pension people. And then what happened for the education? We are suffering. You know, sorry to say, it's just a diversion. But the Trump is saying, okay, we all to close the education ministry. Here we have to spend more money for the education, for the large new education policy or health policies. Everybody expect, okay, we will want insurance for 15 lakhs or rebate in good pre-hospitals. What kind of hospitals you will provide when you are not paying tax to those people? And the people who have a trust, on the name of the trust, they have a hospitals and they get free, everything free for their own people, for their family members, get machines from out of the country and then say, oh, they are not paying tax. These kind of loopholes are there. But because of the system, sorry to say again, not everybody, there are a number of good, very good officials, honest officers, but the bureaucracy also dominate in this system, and the politicians who also have the
but Alokji, the loopholes, but the loopholes can only be exploited by the very rich who have the teams of people who exploit the loopholes. And the reality of this is, and let me get Mr. Iyer into this conversation. Mr. Iyer, this is not true only of India, it's true of it's true of America, because the biggest corporates will be headquartered in the Bahamas and they will be paying license fees for their brand name to their own entity in the Bahamas and saying that, oh, because the license fee is $20 billion and that's an expenditure, so we actually run a loss. You know what to do, we are such bichara, such poor people, you know, don't mind my private jet. So, very rich people get away with it. The poor, of course, can't afford to pay the tax. So, what about the rest of us?
So, good morning, Rishabhji, and namaskar to all my fellow panelists. So, the issue of expanding the taxpayer base has very well been talked about by other fellow panelists here, right? So, that's an unavoidable issue. The larger question is, what can we do about it? I mean, we have certain realities.
Yeah.
So probably let me wear my CA hat instead of my, as a professor, as a doctorate. My thinking as a basic CA is, when I look at United States, Singapore and other countries, the filing of returns can be as an individual, as a family, with children, parents. So when we allow that kind of a system in India, that would automatically factor in the number of dependent members, the number of earning members, taking family as a unit. Perhaps that's the one way where it is possible for government to bring in a kind of relief for people. See, on one hand, we need to expand the tax base, agriculturists and others who don't deserve to get that kind of exemption. So that's a point taken, right? So here I'm talking of what else can be done from the other side, so that there is some kind of relief that can be extended to people. And perhaps one more thing, talking from a corporate or as an individual, high net worth individual point of view, more than the tax, people get irritated by litigations. So we also need to look at, as a government, as a ministry, also need to look at how do you make the entire environment litigation free, the entire environment, more certain in terms of, exactly what to pay. You don't have to play around with the numbers, right? So that's what would make this entire experience, paying money will never be pleasant, but at least it will make the entire experience comfortable for taxpayers.
Okay, so let me pick up that thought, right? Because when you say litigation is when the officer in government then says, okay, what have you spent here? But yes, we have a shopkeeper who suddenly says, I'm buying 10 MacBooks. Which are actually being done to get GST benefits. So, the government also has to do its duty, because it's not fair. If I'm an honest taxpayer and the guy next door is doing all sorts of hera-feri, so government has to do it. But Mr. Iyer, has the fact of at least the ease of filing taxes made it a lot easier? That, okay, at least you don't have to go to that income tax office where there will be a clerical level person who, may want whatever just to process your file or accept your file in time. All of that has been out of the window. So has that made it easier to a new generation of people who will never have to visit an income tax office? It's all online.
Absolutely. And I must also say, 25 years ago, I started my career as a chartered accountant. I must say that, the corruption and all those things that we see at the grassroots level of dealing with the officials, various officials, not just tax, excise, all kinds of officials, those things are mostly a thing of past. So we have come a long way over the last 20 years, and particularly the last few years, given the digital push, we have come a long way. That's why I'm saying the base is set. There are some two big irritants on the way. And like my other senior fellow panelists have rightly identified, if we can expand the base, not club everybody as agriculturists and expand the base so that more people pay tax. And second, for individual taxpayers, bring in family as a unit and other changes that we bring in. That would bring in a lot of relief for genuine people who want to pay tax and contribute to, towards the mission of Viksit Bharat. Who doesn't want, as an Indian, who doesn't want to see our country as, the developed country by 2047? We all want to see that.
I can think of a very rich list of people who are more than happy to offshore their assets, but also then complain about the state of the roads. So yes, it's a truism that we all want to contribute, but I can think of a lot of country who are blessed, people who are blessed, sometimes feel that, listen, somebody else can contribute on my behalf. But let me take a practical aspect of this. Ajay Dua, it's, what the lesson we've learned is that at best we can hope at incrementality, that okay, a little bit, and we keep chipping away, we keep improving it year on year. Can we look at something that is actually a leap of state going from one orbit to the other?
Certainly. I don't think we need to be worried totally by the past, or saying that we had said something, we have to only benefit from the delta, the additionality which comes about. All the major improvements in the country's economy, we are now able to have two clear phases, prior to 91 and post 91. You have the benefits when you thought big in 91, 92, when you integrated into the world, when you de-licensed, globalization and liberalization, the two went together. And you have data. Earlier you had the Hindu rate of growth about 3% because it was matching your population, and the post that you had twice that rate. Average irrespective of which government has come into power, you've had a plus 5% rate of growth in GDP on a higher base. So if that is possible, I see no reason why in our tax collection, our expenditure exercise, which is by and large the budgeting. That's all the budget looks at, the revenue and the expenditure and putting the priorities together. I think if we start thinking big and say, I'm going to look at this entire exercise ab initio, and to that I get encouraged by, go back to the economic survey where the chief economic advisor has talked of deregulation. It's first time a theme has been picked up where the government's nominee or the government's representative, senior representative, is clearly recognizing the advantages of deregulating the economy. That means do away with the past shackles and think big. I am optimistic about that it is possible to do so.
Okay, let me get Sumit in. Sumit, let's pick up the next big issue, right? So, all right, we are slightly upset about the taxes, and it's got nothing to do with government. The same would have been true 10 years ago, and the same hopefully may not be true 10 years from now. We don't know, but it's always better if at least your income is going up year on year, and of course then the percentage tax you pay, but at least you have more money in your account, and the country's income or the sum product of its goods and services, of course, the GDP. We are about the 7% mark, slightly less, and unfortunately trending a bit downwards. Now, currently there is no major global crisis. I know there's Ukraine and I know the others are going on, but there's no major crisis. So hopefully it'll become better. But is that going to be enough? Because the government seems to be spending the money on the infrastructure. The trains are being poured, the highways are being built, but we are not ticking up to that 8%, 9% mark.
I think, Rishabhji, 8 and 9% is something which is very important, because I'll like to add a geopolitical perspective to it. Look, world has changed after Trump has taken over office. Now, I think there are 4 years ahead of us. Modi ji is going to be in power. Trump is going to be in power. We are indicating an alignment towards US, and Trump is willing to roll the red carpet. Look, there was a time, look at the numbers of China before Biden and, before Biden and Obama, and after Biden and Obama. In 8 years, China's trajectory altogether changed. We have this 4-year window where the red carpets are being rolled to us. China is being sidelined. Decoupling of supply chains is happening. You have a volatile Middle East which can any day erupt with the ceasefire getting off, or Iran coming into the hitting range, which can happen any day, even tomorrow morning. With all these things, we have to look what best can we take the advantage of the things and keep on moving, because there are some things which we have to let go. There are some things which we have to align for the strategic good and for the good of the nation as well. And honestly, if you ask me, things like strategic autonomy may not be practically sustainable in the long run, because the world order is changing. It's not your intentions are changing. And for the interest of the Bharat and for the interest of all the Bhartis, we might have to trade off some things, and we might have to see how do we respond. Because that additional punch of growth is not going to come from the normal ways. If we keep on doing what we are doing last year, this year results are going to be no different from the last year. So what are we going to do different this year? What are those global opportunities which can come into us? And let us face, Rishabhji, people like China will not want us to be the #1 FDI destination. They don't want our startups to get the maximum money. And any point of time, and HPMV can peak up. Okay. It is dominant right now. It can peak up. So with all these,
okay. So here's the larger picture for those who are interested, because larger picture does matter, right? So the state of the economy is pretty good. We've just got just under $700 billion in foreign exchange reserves. Okay. Yeah. Last year, which is in December 2024, the total FDI received by the country went past $1 trillion US. So overall, the picture of the economy seems pretty decent. But Mr. Iyer, now it looks good. It looks like the highways are being built. It looks like the government efficiency is improving. It looks like welfare schemes are being done, and the houses in the Awas Yojana are being built, and the ration is being given out. It looks good. When we step out, we are seeing the markets are busy. People are buying cars. I can tell you, I live in Delhi, and going out just to have a meal has become very expensive. So, there seems to be wealth around us. But when it comes to the GDP figure, 6.5%. The economic survey says we need to be at 8%, and and I think you and I can agree with that. Why are we not hitting 8%?
Okay, so again, Modi ji always likes to think big, plan big, and have those grand targets. Now the reality is, if we truly want to be Viksit Bharat by 2047, and we have to look at China as an example, we need to deliver 2 decades of 10% growth. The 6 and 7% growth is not going to take us. And we are running out of time. And if you are serious about 2047, we need 10% growth for 2 decades at least. And is it possible? It is very much possible. And, building on Sumit ji's observation, see, we have our geopolitical tailwinds, right? We are an important Quad member. Things are coming in. But there are some things big that the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister need to look at, right? Probably we set up a 1 trillion infrastructure blitzkrieg, right? So we have tasted some success with Gati Shakti and other things. But unless we think big, we think of, let's say, over the next 5 years, we need a 1 trillion fund which will look at, infrastructure in a very different way. Now, how do we bring that kind of money into the system? Some of the things like that you said, supply side constraint can also go away the moment we have that kind of push in manufacturing and infrastructure. We have to start thinking and probably start doing something fundamentally different, start monetizing, pool in our key assets, airways, ports, highways, monetize them. Maybe about 200 billion will come from there. Sovereign wealth fund and invite global pension fund, about 300 billion will come from there. Set up the infrastructure bond, keep a target of $500 billion. There's a lot that can be pushed through. So unless we think big, unless we have 10 Shenzhen like SEZs around the country, one gift city is not enough. Unless we really think big and push for that kind of infrastructure or export-led growth. Now, why I'm also saying export? See, remember, Japan, Deutschmark, let me wear the professor hat. There are some examples of currencies that have done well over a long period of time. Many of the currencies have weakened, including us. Unless we have strong export, unless people around the world want our goods and services, we can't have a strong currency. We can't have a respect of people around the world.
Okay, but Mr. I'm trying to find the X factor, because many of the things that you're saying are happening at a pace, never before, right? The highways are being built at a pace never before. The houses in this country are being built at a pace never before. Our defense localization, which is indigenization, is happening at a pace never before. So everything seems to be happening at a very accelerated pace, but when you boil it down to the GDP figure, 6.5%, what's the X factor missing there?
So the thing is, you are absolutely right. The thing is, because we have had such sluggish economy and we came from fragile 5, compared to that fragile 5 where the previous finance minister of the earlier dispensation left us, what we are doing now looks really big. But the sad reality is, if we want to be where we want to be, we need to do this at a much higher pace. So while we are doing well, and thank God we are doing well, we need to push this hard and we need to keep ourselves some really big, big goals.
It's called state change, orbit change, and let me put that in a perspective, right? You put on a kettle of water, okay, to make your tea, and you keep heating it, and the temperature keeps rising, keeps rising. But at a point, at 100 degrees, there's a state change. It goes from water into gas. So you keep doing it, and it's incremental, and then suddenly a state change happens, and then you go into an incremental orbit. Now, let me get Alok Mehta in this. Alok Mehta, having observed this exercise, both in politics and, and the budgetary exercise and the political economy, as we call it, for the better part of 50 years, we are seeing the incremental growth. It seems to be happening at great pace. We can actually visualize the trains, we can ride on the roads, we can get into the new airports, we can see the ports that are being built from, Vizinjam to Maharashtra. But why is it not translating, do you think, into that state change in GDP growth, where you do, or you start those 2 decades? 2 decades will come in 2047, but we are not this year going to start that 2 decades either.
Rishabh, the problem is because it's still the hangover of the socialist system we talk about. Socialism, certainly the for poor people or the middle class also, the Britain or America also, they do a lot. But here, we still feel a number of lobbies are working there and they say, okay, we have this type of system, everything we want free. And the other way, because we want, you are very right, Prime Minister Narendra Modi since last 10 years, what he visualized for the lower people, self-employment, this kind of what we are talking. We can't be a China, we can't be United States. The problem is with us because we are more democratic country. I think you will agree, and all our guests will agree that we have a democracy. We can't do what the Chinese did because we want to do a road. Here you see in East Delhi, if you go some bridge, okay, they are not giving the land, then the problem. So these kind of problem also there. So we are taking some steps, and the government of India is also trying their best. But that's why I think the self-employment, more for education, people, the mindset should be changed. The problem is we are not spending more money still, 5%, 6% for education, more for the health sector, because then the whole society will be more aware about the problems of the country. Because in such a big country, you can't solve the problem only by the GDP. I can understand we are going better than you see Britain, how poor the economy is very suffering a lot. Germany is shocking, maybe because of the Ukraine crisis, but even then I feel that the Germany economy was better than anybody else in Europe. But now they are also facing a serious problem. So in the comparison, India is better situation.
Yeah, no, so like I've told you, we are the fastest growing global economy in the world. Okay, so yay. But the reality check is that yes, if by 2047, which means exactly 22 years from now, okay, you want to be developed economy, that means that your basic standards of living and healthcare and everything is in comparison to developed economies. Yes, you will have to do ideally double digit growth for the large part of the next 2 decades. Now, my question is, when will that start? It culminates when it starts, but first it has to start. General Dwivedi, there are some big ticket items. I'm going to discuss AI because that's the flavor of the moment. But let me put a premise. Okay, let me put a premise. For the entire period of our independence, there are 2 major expenditures which are going to be dealt with. Number 1 is import of energy. Number 2 is defense, and more importantly, the import of capital expenditure in defense. Salaries and all you can't do anything about, right? 2 biggest points. Now we are seeing incremental reduction in how much monies we send abroad because we are making our own defense goods. Then comes a state, General Dwivedi, where forget having to spend money, you are earning money because you are selling the planes and selling the missiles and selling the helicopters and selling the tanks. How far are we from that state change?
Well, Rishabh, before I answer your question, I also put on my professor's hat where I teach management at top of the line business schools and also spent about 3 years in China as a defense attaché. The time has come that we need to take a quantum leap, because I was in China around the time when the Chinese took a big leap. It's a time we need to take a big leap. 8% to 10% is imperative. 6% will not do. Because when you see the big economy, if China is growing at 5%, they are adding about $1 trillion to the economy. When we are growing at 6.5%, we are only adding 300 billion to our economy. So therefore, we need to churn the pot. And secondly, we need to do it differently, because today our manufacturing is just about 14% of our GDP, whereas Chinese manufacturing is 25%. When the supply chains are realigning, they are realigning toward Vietnam, they are realigning toward Malaysia, they are realigning toward Indonesia, but they are not wholeheartedly realigning to India. Now coming to your defense part of it, you see, Rishabh, the security and the defense budget are interrelated. Over the last about 8 to 10 years, our security concerns have escalated, but our defense budget has shrunk. In about 2014, we are contributing about 2.4% of GDP to defense. Today it is below 2%. Well, that is not kept pace with the security concerns. And second point is, you rightly said about manufacturing. We have a target of about 1.7 5 lakh crores by 2025 this year, and about 50,000 crores are exports. Well, that has to be met only once we are able to bring in technology. Unfortunately, our exports are not high technology exports.
Yeah.
They are the exports which are at the lower end of the spectrum and not at the higher end of the spectrum. Now, that's one change we need to do. And second point is, despite our self-reliance push, we are still the biggest importers of the defense equipment.
In the
We
world,
are
yes.
contributing about 9 to 10% of the global imports. Now, that has to change. So, therefore, I would recommend two very important things. Firstly, as you said, AI. We need to go wholeheartedly on our research and development. Today we are contributing 0.67%, means less than 1% of our R&D, whereas China is more than 2%. They contribute. The Americans are contributing more than 4%. So we need to do quantum jump in our research and development and go for technology, either TOT, or we need to innovate, but we need to get to high-end technology manufacturing. And secondly, Rishabh, we need to actually bring in huge change in our skilling, because 40% of our labor force is in agriculture, and we are not able to skill our workforce. Until we do that, we are not going to get the dividend of the so-called
Okay, all right. Okay, so I just let's just put perspectives, right? The country is doing just fine. Okay, we are not in a crisis. There's no disaster going on. I know there's a stock market correction, but stock market has been in record high every month for the last year. Okay, so it's going to correct because it needs to. Otherwise, you're going to have a big trouble for any investors 6 months down the line. So other than that, the country is doing great. You can see it, you can feel it. So we are not in trouble. But we don't want to be just, not be in trouble. We just don't want to be getting past the finish line every year. We want to be winning and, and setting a great pace. It's really complicated, okay? This is the stuff of Nobel Prizes. And Ajay Dua, you don't want to go too fast because then you overheat and then you have a bubble. At the same time, you have to ensure social justice, because if a few people are getting too rich and then other people are upset, that creates law and order problems. So, let alone other political uncertainties. So it's a very fine and complex balance, but it boils down to, I think, what General Dwivedi was saying. In the end, you have to be a technological superpower. That's what's going to matter. Now, how do we get there?
I would say, Rishabh, just putting on a thinking cap, that we need to step up and drastically step up the priority and the funds, etc., which we attach to the education and the healthcare sector. Then the entire population of the country gets involved in nation building. Today, if you look at the number of people out of the 140 billion who have an opportunity, they may have the desire, but the opportunity to contribute to nation building, and nation building not altruistic sense, but to themselves and thereby to the nation, it will happen when you use this population, which you have the manpower advantage, the workforce advantage, turn it into a reality. And I think our center, state, private sector, all had been lagging behind drastically.
Okay, so Ajay Dua, I want to pick that thought with you, okay, because every month I take interviews for people to hire, right? If you want a job, okay, and if you think there's no job growth happening in India, come send your CV to me. I have jobs available. Now, when I'm announcing what the job interview questions are going to be. So if anybody is smart and sees this clip, they'll know what I'm going to ask them. I asked 5 questions. One, I ask the names of the chief ministers of 4 states, one from the north, one from the south, one from the northeast, and one from the west. Then I asked the names of 4 international presidents or prime ministers. I asked what is the GDP of India. I asked in which year was the Battle of Plassey fought. And I asked a very, very simple question: what is the first law of motion? Okay, that's all. It just gives me an understanding of how much this person has actually done in 16 years of schooling. 9 out of 10 people, Ajay Dua, can't answer More than 20% of those questions.
Yeah.
What's gone wrong? Where have we gotten so badly wrong?
I'm not surprised, Rishabh. That is what all the surveys, including independent private surveys of quality of education, are pointing out to. Saying, yes, you may have achieved in the country universal primary education, saying everybody at least has an opportunity to go to school. But what is the quality of education being imparted to them? That is what your 5 questions and the interviews reveal, that they have gone through a process, but they have not become employable. The quality of education must improve drastically. And one of the inputs for improving education is going to be better nutrition, better health care. All these things work on one another. You take it from me, once you have people who are healthier, people who are actually more educated, school level, I'm not talking of college level education, etc. That is, the brilliant ones go there, and the German vocational system brought in post the Second World War. But today, your 10th standard ones also, many of them would not be able to answer the 5 questions which you are rightly trying to judge.
Now the reason that, of course, and you can say, oh, that's bookish knowledge, right? It's not really a skill set. But the reason is, these are people who voluntarily want to do journalism. Okay, so you voluntarily want to one day sit and cover the union budget. All right, it's a voluntary choice. Now, Sumit Peer, if almost no one I'm speaking to, so 9 out of 10, don't know what the GDP of India is. Okay, despite the fact that there is so much knowledge freely available. I mean, I know 20 years ago you had to get a newspaper or go to a library and figure all this stuff out. Now it's popping on your screen multiple hours a day, but it's not registering. Are we in trouble because of that?
Rishabhji, we always say that we have 800 million youth, and our demographic dividend is going to last for next 70 years. But the kind of things what you are talking about is definitely a thing to worry about, because our education system is still stuck with Babur, Humayun and Akbar, unfortunately, and we are still talking about their Gaurav Gathas. And unfortunately, we are not attuned to the needs of the hour. Because if we were to use that time to teach them GDP, teach them politics and all, and we say, no, if you want to talk politics, you have to go to political science only, then only you will be taught politics. Why do you need the GDP? You're already teaching chemistry. Because at the end of the day, that education wherein everything culminates to all these things, right? That holistic approach is not there. It is still pretty much segmented what British left us, and we are trying to improvise that. Honestly, British made education system to make clerks. They did not make education system to make intellectuals and geniuses. And still in our country, we are lacking that concept, which I've been always trying to put across, is unitary entrepreneurship. We are not pushing of that. People want to have a startup, want to have $1 billion valuation, must find a VC to burn a few $100 million to reach that. Well, that is not going to happen with everybody. So unless and until we change that orientation, that ki पढ़ लिख के नौकरी नहीं करनी है, पढ़ लिख के you have to become contributors, you can still contribute to the GDP, you can still contribute to the country. That change in orientation and mindset is not happening.
Okay,
that
all right. Okay, so you've hit exactly what my balance few minutes I'm going to spend. Let me get Mr. Iyer in on this, okay? Because Mr. Iyer, I can also argue the contrarian. I can say that as long as you make a good pizza, you don't need to know what the first law of motion is, okay? But you need to make a good pizza and sell a good pizza, and that's perfectly fine. So the issue then is that for a large part, especially in North India, right, for people whose still dream job is to do what Mr. Dua did, is to join government at any level, okay, let alone at the senior level that he served in, for them that's still the dream job. Why are these people not becoming entrepreneurs? What are we missing in terms of our mindset?
Okay, so amazing, brilliant question, spot on, Shivji. Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. There are 3 stages. One is, as part of education, you learn, you hear, you can reproduce, but it is only when you reach a stage where it becomes a lived reality for you, right? One is improving the content that is being taught to the students. Second is the way it is delivered and the way it is, received by the student. It becomes a lived reality of their experience. Education doesn't embed. So that's first thing. Second, unfortunately, over the past few years, looking at education, student as customer, this is another very unfortunate thing that has crept in our education system. Right from basic education. Today, if you ask, see, I deal with 23, 24, 25-year-olds, MBA students. But even if you ask at a high school level, today the schools, the teachers don't want to, tell the wards, the students that you are not doing well. Why? Because a kind of student as a client, a student as a market has, that kind of mindset has come in. Everybody wants to say you are doing well. That false sense of, that you are doing well is embedded in right from that early age, that people are not really pushing hard to work, to really study and learn and see how to apply things. So I'll say the problem is twofold. One is the education has to move from merely saying this is this, to how do I see this playing out in my real life and how it becomes my lived experience. Second, let us look at education as what it is supposed to be. It is not some, it's not some hospitality industry, for God's sake, right? We are doing character building here. So somewhere that mid-course correction also has to happen. This is me speaking as a very, very passionate, academic for my life.
Alok Mehta, the bottom line in this is government is not going to do this. Government cannot do this. The only job of government from today till the next 20 years is to get out of the way, because Bharat is going to have to do this. So how do we create that energy that we are not looking at the budget and we are expecting that Nirmala will make an announcement and then that will fix all these things? No, I mean, you and I will have to fix all of these things. So how do we A, get government out of the way, and B, get the guidance, the margdarshan from government on how do we get this out of the way?
Very rightly said, Rishabh. I think that's why the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, either in the Mann Ki Baat or awareness in the all over India, you see the skill development and the education for literacy for the girl child. I think these kind of it's taking time, but certainly you go to Bastar. I visited people who are in self-employment from skill development centers. You see in Dantewada, you'll surprise in Jagdalpur. So these kind of awareness we need in remote area, in rural area especially. And I still say, people, honest teachers are there. Maybe in the education system, Sumit, you must be not aware that the new education policy now it's going to implement it because it's a state subject. That's why you are very rightly said, we need more honest people in the society. That's why it depends on not only the government, in the political system. If our political parties also, they should have at least honesty, minimum honesty, to create the awareness for self-reliance, for more literacy, for more health awareness. And that's why support are the positive points of any government, any party, because we need nowhere in the world this kind of system what we are in. Sometimes I feel that some political parties, they create more chaos other than any foreign power or what we talk about it.
Okay,
so I think that's why we need
I just
more
want to touch upon a last thing and then we will take a break. Okay, so Sumit, let me flip it around, right? I can have a contrarian argument. I can say that for anybody who thinks that Indian people don't like to be entrepreneurial, I can tell you, ask any Marwadi, ask any Gujarati, okay, entrepreneurship is running in their veins, okay, the dhanda, okay, it is people from my kind of backgrounds who, still grew up that the concept of starting your own company did not exist. You were supposed to become a professional. Now, whether you become an engineer, you become a doctor, you become a lawyer, you were supposed to become a professional. But dhanda is not something unknown to India. The difference being that dhanda versus trading versus low-level manufacturing to cutting edge, that this is the best in the world. That's the X factor, Sumit. Now, how do we hit that X factor? It's not like we don't have good businessmen in the country.
We have all the things what we need. The only thing is, there's one thing, Rishabh ji, Hindi में बोलूँगा, पढ़ाई और कमाई दो अलग-अलग चीजें हैं. Because if I want to do a padai and make a kamai out of it, that is where the system collapses, system fails. Padai is for your mental enlightenment, know the world, know what you are doing. But the challenge is that if I want to use my padai as a way to get a nokri and to get the encashment and, be employed somewhere, that is where the challenge is. So the padai, what we learn, has to fundamentally change the paradigms and teaches, look, I'm awareing you, I'm enabling you, but that doesn't mean that you are supposed to exactly if you study history or going to teach somewhere history or you have to go anything to do with history. You can still be a journalist, you can still be an entrepreneur, you can still be so-called, some people will mock me for saying pakodonomics. Even if you can set up a big street shop, there's nothing wrong in that. So I might not have those inhibitions. I have done my master's in, let's say, literature. How can I run a halwai ki dukan? That is where the problem starts coming. And when these things start getting into the society, then one day you will have a Haldiram, which is a global success story. Then one day you will have all those things which come up.
Yeah.
Mr. Dhirubhai Ambani was not a great pada lekha guy, right? But he had that thing in him, and that is where Reliance is today.
Yeah,
but
true.
if we get to the fact that padai and kamai are two different things, unless and until that fundamental change happens, I don't expect future things
No, but
to change.
fundamental change is possible. And I think Reliance is a great example. When I began my career, Reliance was primarily an oil and gas company. Okay. Today we don't even think of Reliance as an oil and gas company. We are thinking we are thinking geo, and we are thinking technology and retail. So it's completely transformed. So I need to take a break. We are going to be back in a couple of minutes. Yeah. Quickly, Sumit. You want to make? Everybody wants to make a point. Okay, 10 seconds. Sumit, then General Dwivedi. Sumit.
Look at Wipro. It started as Wipro oil mills. Tel banate the. Now they are the biggest IT name in the world.
Okay.
They started from making sabun and tel.
Okay, General Dwivedi.
Bishop, just I want to share my experience because I am so much in education. First and foremost, I think we are not spending enough on education, less than 1%, while China and South Korea and other countries gone up with education. Second point is, today, Kamai and Padai have to go together. When we talk campus to corporate, we got to ensure that our students who pass out from the business school, they are employable. That's not what is not happening, because there is a big gap between the campus and corporate. And thirdly, please understand that today we are not in knowledge age. We are in the conceptual age. Conceptual age means new concepts. We are not in the rote learning. And I do a lot of work with the Central University on new education policy. Until we translate on the ground, it's only on the paper.
Okay.
It has to be translated.
Let me put that into perspective. One of the world's most valuable silicon chip companies never even makes a silicon chip. All they do is design. Every single one of us, and all of you watching this broadcast, have one of their design chips in your phones. It's called Qualcomm. They don't manufacture anything, but they hold the design patents, and that is where the value chain is. It's a very interesting concept of the new age that we are living in. I need to take a very short break. We come back on the other side. See you in a minute.
MDH का किचन किंग किचन में हो तो हम सब कुछ बना सकते हैं। बैंगन का भरता, आलू गोभी, भिंडी मसाला और भी बहुत कुछ। MDH।
उत्तर प्रदेश की योगी सरकार प्रदेश के आर्थिक विकास के साथ साथ कानून व्यवस्था को भी दुरुस्त कर रही है। यातायात व्यवस्था को सुचारू तरीके से संचालित करने के लिए मुख्यमंत्री योगी आदित्यनाथ ने ट्रैफिक पुलिस में महिलाओं को भी शामिल करने का फैसला किया है।
30% बेटियों को भर्ती करेंगे, जिससे सड़कों पर शोहदों को ठीक उपचार कर सके।
यूपी ट्रैफिक पुलिस में महिलाओं की अलग से विंग बनेगी। महिला विंग में 10,000 भर्तियां की जाएंगी। महिला निरीक्षक, उप निरीक्षक, सिपाही की अलग से तैनाती। सड़क हादसों में कमी लाने का लक्ष्य। सड़क हादसों में मौतों की संख्या में 50% कमी का लक्ष्य। सभी जिलों में रोड सेफ्टी एक्शन प्लान बनाने के ठोस उपाय। यातायात नियमों का पालन सुनिश्चित करेगी महिला ट्रैफिक पुलिस। सड़क दुर्घटनाओं को रोकने के लिए सुरक्षा उपायों को लागू करवाना। ट्रैफिक नियमों का उल्लंघन करने वालों पर सख्त कार्रवाई की जाएगी। उत्तर प्रदेश की ट्रैफिक पुलिस में महिलाओं के शामिल होने से महिलाओं के लिए रोजगार के अवसर तो खुलेंगे ही, महिला वाहन चालकों के लिए भी सड़क पर सफर करना आसान हो जाएगा।
खाने में कुछ स्वाद नहीं है।
अरे किफायती लाल सस्ते वाले दाल मसाले स्वाद हुआ बेकार। इधर कीमती लाल को देखो खाना बना कमाल। MDH की हल्दी मिर्ची धनिया करे कमाल। ये रंग दे, ये खुशबू दे, ये तीखा, ये कम पड़े। क्या निराला MDH मसाला।
Co-powered by PolicyBazaar.com। हर फैमिली होगी इंश्योर्ड।
MDH की देगी मिर्च,
देगी मिर्च का तड़का, अंग अंग फड़का।
MDH की देगी मिर्च।
पिछली बार 8 घंटे वाली बिजली चो कोई कट लग्या नहीं लग्या, ਕੱਟ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਤਾਂ ਛੱਡੋ, ਬੱਲਬ ਨੇ ਝਮੱਕਾ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਾਰਨਾ, ਝਮੱਕਾ।
ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਵੀ ਬਿੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਂਦਾ। ਅਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਇਹ ਉਪਰਾਲਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ।
ਜੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਸੀਐਮ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਜੀ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਹਰੇਕ ਵਰਗ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਸਾਰੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵਾਅਦੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਪੂਰੇ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਸਾਡਾ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਦਾ ਬਿੱਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਏ ਉਹ ਜ਼ੀਰੋ ਆਇਆ ਏ।
ਮੈਂ ਇੱਕ ਦਿਹਾੜੀਦਾਰ ਬੰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਿੱਲ ਭਰਨਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਔਖਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਿੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਭਰਨਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਇਸ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਤੇ ਮਾਣ ਹੈ।
ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ 600 ਯੂਨਿਟ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਫੈਸਲਾ ਲਿਆ ਸੀ। 90% ਘਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਹਦਾ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੋਇਆ। ਅਸੀਂ ਭ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਟਾਚਾਰ ਰੋਕਿਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਰੈਵਨਿਊ ਦੇ ਹੋਰ ਸਾਧਨ ਵਧਾਏ ਨੇ, ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਮਿਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇੰਡਸਟਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ।
ਮੇਰਾ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਦਾ ਬਿੱਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ 1 ਸਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਆਵਾ ਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਵੀ 1 ਸਾਲ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਵੀ ਆਂਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ। ਜਦ ਆਹ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਦੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਬਣੀ ਆ ਜੀ।
ਮੁੰਡਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਛੋਟਾ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਪਿਛਲੀ ਵਾਰੀ ਬਿੱਲ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਆਇਆ ਤਾਂ ਮਾਂ 3500 ਰੁਪਈਆ, ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਐਤਕੀ ਜ਼ੀਰੋ ਆਇਆ। ਮਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਐਸਾ ਮੁੱਖ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਪੂਰੇ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਬਣਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਏ।
खाने में कुछ स्वाद नहीं है।
अरे किफायती लाल सस्ते वाले दाल मसाले स्वाद हुआ बेकार। इधर कीमती लाल को देखो खाना बना कमाल। NewsX की हल्दी मिर्ची धनिया करे कमाल। ये रंग दे, ये खुशबू दे, ये तीखा, ये कम पड़े। क्या निराला NewsX मसाला।
विश्व के सबसे बड़े सांस्कृतिक समागम महाकुंभ प्रयागराज में अग्नि सुरक्षा के लिए 24 घंटे सतर्क और तत्पर है उत्तर प्रदेश अग्निशमन तथा आपात सेवा बल। आप भी रहें जागरूक। कुकिंग गैस में अच्छी गुणवत्ता वाले LPG पाइप और रेगुलेटर का प्रयोग करें। रसोई घर का निर्माण टीन शेड में करें। उपयोग के बाद रेगुलेटर नॉब से गैस सप्लाई बंद करें। LPG गैस की गंध आने पर तुरंत रेगुलेटर व गैस स्टोव बंद करें। टेंट में LPG गैस और ज्वलनशील पदार्थ का उपयोग न करें। शिविरों में मानक के अनुरूप बिजली के कार्य कराएं। उच्च रेटिंग वाले MCB ESCB का प्रयोग करें। सर्किट, बल्ब, ट्यूबलाइट के मध्य कम से कम 15 सेंटीमीटर की दूरी सुनिश्चित करें। अपना कर यह आसान उपाय महाकुंभ को बनाए सुरक्षा का पर्याय। स्वच्छ, सुरक्षित एवं सुव्यवस्थित महाकुंभ 2025 प्रयागराज।
MDH का किचन किंग किचन में हो तो हम सब कुछ बना सकते हैं। बैंगन का भरता, आलू गोभी, भिंडी मसाला और भी बहुत कुछ।
MDH
ਪਿਛਲੀ ਵਾਰ 8 ਘੰਟੇ ਵਾਲੀ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਚੋਂ ਕੋਈ ਕੱਟ ਲੱਗਿਆ? ਨਹੀਂ ਲੱਗਿਆ। ਕੱਟ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਤਾਂ ਛੱਡੋ, ਬੱਲਬ ਨੇ ਝਮੱਕਾ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਾਰਨਾ, ਝਮੱਕਾ।
ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਵੀ ਬਿੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਂਦਾ। ਅਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਇਹ ਉਪਰਾਲਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ।
ਜੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਸੀਐਮ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਜੀ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਹਰੇਕ ਵਰਗ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਸਾਰੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵਾਅਦੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਪੂਰੇ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਸਾਡਾ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਦਾ ਬਿੱਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਏ ਉਹ ਜ਼ੀਰੋ ਆਇਆ ਏ।
ਮੈਂ ਇੱਕ ਦਿਹਾੜੀਦਾਰ ਬੰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਿੱਲ ਭਰਨਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਔਖਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਿੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਭਰਨਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਇਸ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਤੇ ਮਾਣ ਹੈ।
ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ 600 ਯੂਨਿਟ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਫੈਸਲਾ ਲਿਆ ਸੀ। 90% ਘਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਹਦਾ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੋਇਆ। ਅਸੀਂ ਭ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਟਾਚਾਰ ਰੋਕਿਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਰੈਵਨਿਊ ਦੇ ਹੋਰ ਸਾਧਨ ਵਧਾਏ ਨੇ, ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਮਿਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇੰਡਸਟਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ।
ਮੇਰਾ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਦਾ ਬਿੱਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ 1 ਸਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਆਵਾ ਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਵੀ 1 ਸਾਲ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਵੀ ਆਂਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ। ਜਦ ਆਹ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਦੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਬਣੀ ਆ ਜੀ।
ਮੁੰਡਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਛੋਟਾ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਪਿਛਲੀ ਵਾਰੀ ਬਿੱਲ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਆਇਆ ਤਾਂ ਮਾਂ 3500 ਰੁਪਈਆ, ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਐਤਕੀ ਜ਼ੀਰੋ ਆਇਆ। ਮਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਐਸਾ ਮੁੱਖ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਪੂਰੇ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਬਣਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਏ।
MDH की देगी मिर्च,
देगी मिर्च का तड़का, अंग अंग फड़का।
MDH की देगी मिर्च।
All right, welcome back. Let me pick up this conversation where we left off. For a vast majority of people at home watching today, there are only 2-3 questions. Income tax ka kya hona hai? All right. What will happen to the Sensex? Because there will be an investment in a stock market which we all lose or benefit from depending on what takes place. and of course in my particular sector what is particularly taken place. So the first two are of course generic questions, and let me throw them on board, because joining us on the broadcast now, Dr. Sharat Kohli. If you watch NewsX, you should see him with us very, very often. Lieutenant General A.K. Bhatt is with us from the Indian Space Association. We're going to have a very interesting conversation, General Bhatt. Dr. Anjali Sane is with us. She is a dean at the MIT World Peace University in Pune. Arpan Ghosh is with us. He is the founder and director of Gamma Rotors. Tarun Garg, partner in Deloitte, is with us, and Bhavnesh Kothari, founder and CEO of Property First, with us. Let me start with Dr. Kohli. Dr. Kohli, the two sort of generalized questions: taxes and markets. What's your best guess?
Good morning, Rishabh. Good morning to my fellow panelists and, of course, the NewsX viewers on this budget day morning. Well, I think tax, there is a lot of expectation, as always, from the finance minister. You know, about 8 to 10 crore people, Rishabh, filed their tax returns, and you know, the people who actually pay taxes are about 2 crores, or maybe a little bit here and there. So effectively, you know, 22 to 24 lakh crores of direct tax collections in a year. Of course, GST as an indirect tax is paid by the entire country, but direct taxes are paid by limited number of people. So I think these people are the blue-eyed citizens. They are the VIPs, I call them, because they contribute to the exchequer quite substantially. So they do expect some kind of relief, and I think the tax guys had divided the regimes into two parts. There's the old regime and the new regime, where 2/3 of people have already moved to the new regime, and they do expect, you know, the basic exemption limit of 3 lakhs, which has been prescribed in the new regime, to be moved up to 5 lakhs. They also expect Section 87A rebate, which is given up to 25,000 rupees, where your income up to 7 to 7.5 lakh rupees is not taxed. This be raised to 10 lakhs. And the third expectation is, you know, the tax rates are such that it's 5, 10, 15, 20, and then 30. So there's a gap between 20 and 30. There's a big gap. So this gap can be filled by 25, so that you're not taxed straight away after 15 lakhs with 30%. And of course, the 30%, which is taxed after 15 lakhs, I think should be raised to about 18 lakhs to 20 lakhs. And of course, to the salaried people, they do the standard deduction is 1 lakh from 75,000. I think that the cost of living has gone up, and the business people can set off their expenses, whereas the salaried cannot set off their expenses. So they do expect the standard deduction to be raised overall. So I think from the tax, basically, I think the government is going to gain out of money landing in the pockets of people. And since the budget, one of the prime aims of the budget is going to be to raise consumption overall. So this is largely going to help in boosting the consumption. If I have money, either I'm going to save and invest, or I'm going to probably spend. Either way, you know, the countries.
Okay. All right. Just hold,
people are going to spend.
All right. Hold your thoughts, sir, because
wishes, you know.
Yeah, of the 7 of us in this conversation, 2 are entrepreneurs, but the rest of us either earn salaries or even in part earn a pension. And we pay taxes on everything. And if you put something in a fixed deposit after you paid your taxes and accounted for inflation, you earn in negative. So, whoa, that's not happy news. But the country is doing well. We're not in a crisis. Things are happening, seems to be going in the right direction. But how do we look after each other while we're going in the right direction? Let me get Dr. Anjali into this conversation. Dr. Anjali, 2 basic questions. Everybody wants to know, what's your best guess? Can something other than an incremental, frustratingly slow change ever happen in direct taxes?
Good morning. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, please.
So, well, as Dr. Kohli also rightly pointed out, I am also expecting that in the new tax regime, there will be certain exemption limits which will be increased. 2 things here to be emphasized. One, as a academician also, I would like to emphasize here that we are expecting a lot from the budget, especially in terms of taxes as well as in terms of the expenditure on the higher education sector. And second, as a woman who is earning as well, so if there can be certain exemptions, limits which can be increased, especially for salaried women, we are expecting a lot from the budget which is coming up.
Okay, so let me put that thought to Bhavesh. Okay, just hold your thought, man, because I want to take it one by one. Let me put that thought to Bhavesh. Bhavesh, what is actually possible? Because what we see, and incremental changes have happened last year, they've happened 3 years before that, right? Can we do anything beyond incremental change? That okay, it goes from 7 lakhs to 10 lakhs, and that is also only if you invest in certain categories of products, and you get maybe a 0.25% subvention in interest for a first-time home loan. We're talking about small changes here and there. Can government do something bolder than that? Is it possible?
And Parth, we need that right now. Real estate is what builds wealth for most of us, our parents, for us. If we are getting wealthier, it's only by real estate mostly, right?
Yeah.
If people do not invest in real estate, they're not going to get wealthier. And the next generation, the generation which is 25, 30, needs to understand that investing in real estate will make them wealthier in next 10 to 15 years, and government needs to give impetus so that the limit needs to increase from 2 lakh to 5 lakh, the tax rebate limit. The interest rates needs to go down separately from housing loans. When the inflation is rising to great limits, government always increases the interest rates, and that increases the home loan interest rates, which is not good. Average home loan interest rate of 6.5-7% is very healthy for economies, which is there in most of the developed economies of the world. Singapore, US, Dubai, Europe, all of them are less than 5%. India is still at 8.5-9%.
Okay.
So these things need to be taken
Bhavesh,
care of.
let me ask a very basic question. Right now, as an entrepreneur, okay, working in the real estate sector, all right, you will have employees, right?
Yes.
Now, those employees will pay taxes. Some
Yes.
of them will be
Yes.
contractual employees, some of them will be full-time employees. So actually,
Correct.
if the tax rates goes down, it makes your life easier, because then those guys are earning more.
They earn more,
for no cost to company to you. So what
Right.
is the expectation are you seeing amongst the people whom you are paying salaries to? Do they feel irritated that, listen, I am an honest taxpayer, and what the heck? Where's my share of the pie?
Exactly. With the inflation going so much, tax going to around 35-40% at the end of it, then indirect taxes being so much with GST, trust me, nothing is left at the end of it. My employees are not left, I mean, hand to mouth, right? Of course, a lot of them. And then, of course, we support them with incentives, bonuses, those things. But that'll help a lot to the middle class.
Yeah, but you
people,
pay
yes.
tax on all of those things, So
All of those things,
and
yes.
yes, you should do good tax management, and there's certain allowances and expenditures we should write off. But let me put that question, and I'm asking the straightforward question, because let's face it, most of us are interested in that one point, and that's the point when we switch off the budget speech. So let me get Tarun Garg in on that. Tarun, the changes are happening. Okay, the tax brackets are different this year than they were last year. They're different from what they were 5 years ago. So the changes are happening. Of the 8 crore people Sharad Kohli mentioned who are now filing tax returns, almost 60-70% don't actually pay any tax. They just file a return and they don't come under a tax bracket. But can the government ever have the ability to do something bold, or is it just again incremental, a 0.25% here and a 50,000 rupees here?
So, well, see, this is the best opportunity for this government now that, it's like 6 months from the earlier budget that was presented. So in July, when the full budget was presented, we were saying that, look, the government has not got enough time to prepare, but this is the right time. And then in the last budget speech, the finance minister, Sitharaman ji, she had already kind of called out that, look, there will be a flurry of changes. There will be new income tax act and the rules that will be framed. Definitely, there was a committee that was kind of formed up. And I think about 6,500 suggestions were received regarding how to overhaul the new entire Income Tax Act. So let's see how the
Tarun, it's great to talk about it. Okay, but okay, reality check. And Sharad Kohli started with this, so let me give it as upfront and blunt as it can get. Nirmala Sitharaman, as finance minister, is today going to tell you that the government is going to spend about 50 lakh crore rupees over the next 1 year. Okay, within that you will find out that about 20 odd lakh crore rupees of government's income comes from direct taxes. Half of that comes from individual taxpayers. The meaning is corporates. So the individual taxpayer, Tarun Garg, the 2% or less than 2% of the population pays for 1/4 of India's expenditure. Now, surely that's a broken system. Tarun.
No, absolutely. See, this is the best time for the government to make some bold moves, as my co-panelists have already called out. See, there is a big gap between that, say, 50 up to 15 lakh. There is a tax brackets that is there. But then the moment your income exceeds 15 lakhs, there is a straight 30% tax that is triggered. So definitely that there is a reason for widening this gap. And then this GDP rates that were kind of announced, or the growth rate that were kind of announced in the yesterday's economic survey, that is also pointing out there is a dip in that. So it's the best time that
So just take that thought, Tarun, before I go to the others, and then I want to have slightly more detailed conversation, because we will have a sectoral conversation on drones and in space. But Tarun, why is that? Because it everything looks fine. I mean, the infrastructure spending looks great. I know the markets are a bit down right now, but that's a reasonable correction. The FDI, I know the forex reserves are slightly down, but they peaked in November, like a record high of $700+ billion. Everything looks great. The ports are being built, the airports are being built, the Vande Bharat Expresses are coming out. My neighbor took 6 years to build his house, but the Parliament of India was built in 2 years. Everything looks great. Why is it not showing up in GDP numbers?
See, from a consumption, and Indian economy can't be untouched with the global scenario. See, globally, we see all the economies are not doing that well. But given the domestic in India, the domestic scenarios, it is already kind of giving some impetus to the Indian economy. And now is the right time, I think, put in some more money in the hands of the middle class individuals, thereby increase their spendings. And hence, it will also boost in the supply, because there is a clear fillip that will be given to the economy by virtue of putting in money.
Okay, Sharad Kohli, it looks great. I can see you in a car. If you head on to a highway in any direction out of Delhi, and you're seeing, the bulldozers are out, the cranes are out, and rapid development is taking place. Why is it not translating? Why are we not getting above 7% GDP growth?
Okay, two reasons, Rishabh. One, this is cyclical.
Okay, I think we lost him. Okay, I'm going to get him back, but I want to pick up this conversation. Let me pick it up with General Bhatt first before I come and take up the drone sector, because this is fascinating. So General Bhatt, let's have a really interesting conversation away from the technicality of the launches and other projects which we generally talk about, because this is about money. Okay, so for people watching the broadcast, at the current moment, the space sector, which for most of you were never considered as a sector, it is a sector. Okay, it's a big deal. $6 billion is what the net revenue of the sector is every year. This is projected to go anywhere between 8 to 10x in the next 10 years. So it's going to be one of India's fastest growing sectors. But my question, General Dwivedi, is that when we look at the Indian Space Research Organization and we talk about Gaganyaan and Chandrayaan, and we think, oh, the government spends money, why does a country like India need to spend money? No, ISRO earns money also, because there are foreign parties who put satellites and ISRO has the rockets to put into space. It's not a lot. So it's about 4,000 crores in the last 10 years. So about 400 crores a year. Okay, that's monies that ISRO earns in foreign exchange and contributes to the government's expenditure. Okay, but there are private sector players. So General Bhatt, my question to you is, start with ISRO. What is the potential? I mean, how do we turn the few hundred crores a year into a few thousand crores a year of earnings?
So firstly, let me put it straight. As far as ISRO goes, the government is not interested in profits earned by ISRO. ISRO is more, and with a new policy very distinctly, it is meant to be there for R&D, that is research and development, for higher exploratory science, which they are achieving. They've had the Chandrayaan mission, and in future we'll have the Bharat Antariksh Station and a crewed mission to moon by 2045. So the expenditure on ISRO is not there for profits. But, the spin-off of what we spend for ISRO or with ISRO helps the private space industry.
Okay, so now hold your thought, because that's my next question. So now when we look at Pixel, or we look at Bellatrix, or we look at Agnikul, and there are so many others that are registered within space and so many that are growing, how many of these companies are pre-revenue? Is it all of them? Or are they earning monies?
We have just started, and quite frankly, the private space industry has not started earning money so far.
Okay, so they're
significant.
pre-revenue. Now, without naming companies, within the next year, is there a likelihood that some of these companies will actually start having their first clients and they'll start making money? I'm not saying breaking profit and all that, will come that later, but they'll start earning it, not just the R&D phase, because it's very expensive R&D. So that these companies will start actually earning money. They'll go past pre-revenue.
So the first companies which are going to earn money or have started getting some kind of revenue are the space application companies. Companies which are in the domain of insurance, companies which are providing EO data, that is electro-optical data, remote sensing data to various to the defense or to various ministries for multiple use cases. They are the ones who have already started getting some revenues.
Okay, so for example, for people watching the broadcast, if you are the company like Pixel and you're putting, all spectrum, so infrared, ultraviolet, all, which is what Pixel does, and taking photographs of the earth and providing those facilities, you're going to hit revenue faster. All right. Then there is the next one, which is the SpaceX from India, right? The person who actually builds a rocket to put it into space. Now, how far away are we there from actually having these rockets as a regular occurrence? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years or longer, sir? General Bhatt.
I see at least a minimum period of 2 years.
Okay.
Because from suborbital launch, they have to go into orbital launch. And that too, they have to have more than one launch for orders to be there. In fact, the two leading companies, which I should name, Skyroot and Agricool, are both, they have orders down the line as soon as they go orbital.
Okay, so these are companies that are building rockets that are going to put about 100 kilogram payloads into orbit. Now, one of them has done a test launch, the other hasn't. The test launch, as General Bhatt mentioned, is suborbital. You want to hit orbit. So, couple of years, okay, worst case scenario, 3 or 4 years. So, we are looking at about 4 or 5 years before these companies then start earning revenues because they have a proven launch capacity. So, the fulmination of this is going to happen in 4 or 5 years. General Bhatt, now what about unlocking value? And I'll give you an example of what I mean. If ISRO puts out just the data it has, the observatory data it has, and somebody then builds an application for the use of that data, how much value can be potentially unlock?
So, there are various figures which are there for this, but this has excellent potential because it is in applications where the money has to be. And to tell you about the whole space economy, the big pie, apart from 2 to 3% for launch vehicles, 7 to 8% for satellites, rest of the money is in applications.
Okay,
so it is a very large chunk of the space economy.
So my last question, are we seeing, so government is open to it, new space policy, all these new organizations, including the one, of course, which you are the Director General of, are here, the private companies are coming, they are getting access to ISRO like nothing else. I promise you that, to testing facilities, to R&D facilities, to launch pads. A new launch pad is being built in Tamil Nadu. So everything is going gung-ho. Now my question to you is, but is there private equity, is there venture capital available to these companies because they are expensive R&D places?
So far in the last 3 to 4 years, except last year where it was about $79 million, before that it has been about $130 million which have come from venture capitalists. There is a lot of excitement and faith from venture capitalists, but we also want incentives from the government. Last budget, we did get a 1,000 VC fund, which is going to get operative very soon. That will help startups to grow. But there is much more money required in the space sector.
Okay, so what do you mean by incentive? Do you want grants in aid? What is incentive? Or do you want the government to say, okay, the first company to hit orbital space, you win the India X prize and you'll get $100 million. What do you want? What's the incentive?
So there are multiple things to start with: tax exemptions, a tax holiday for a certain period, like we do for any nascent industry growing, PLI incentives, GSTs, import duty and of course rebates.
Okay.
And also, very importantly, grants and long-term loans are necessary for the sector to
Okay, I know government is really committed to opening up this space. I know it for a fact. General Bhatt knows it as well. But we have to go gangbusters on this. Ladies and gentlemen, Elon is going to put up 40,000 satellites. And if Elon puts up 40,000 satellites, Jeff Bezos will also want to put up 40,000 satellites. And if Jeff Bezos does it, the Chinese will want to do it also. Then Mukesh Ambani will also want to do it. You'll have to put up lakhs and lakhs of these satellites. Lakhs of them. Okay. To the point where we'll have to start worrying about not only the governance of space debris, but the governance of near Earth orbits. So there's a huge potential out there. So we have to go gangbusters on this, on all the tax and the low interest loans which mature after 30 years. So be it. As you're watching Nirmala Sitharaman at the Vitt Mantralaya, that's ladies and gentlemen, South Block. The Ministry of Finance and yes, we are going to go through the procedures. No big trunks of papers anymore, which is a relief. There are iPads and everybody gets a PDF copy. So things have changed and will keep changing now. So let me just beg everybody's patience and pick this up conversation now with Arpan. Okay, so Arpan is running a company called Gamma Rotors. Okay, so Arpan, you are a young entrepreneur, a young founder. You picked the drone sector. Now, what's the difference between a company? Is there a drone sector in India? Because company, great, you sell drones, but what is there a drone sector in India? Does it exist?
No, of course, a drone sector exists. There are 1,000+ companies today, and this industry has seen a rapid growth. And the reason for rapid growth is because what earlier helicopters were doing, now the drones started doing. So the industry has seen a paradigm shift because the cost of operations for a lot of applications have come down just because of drones. But nevertheless, we are a defense-oriented company. We only sell drones to the defense. And our agenda is to make India the drone superpower. My personal agenda, the company's agenda, is to do by 2030. You have the latest drones running, so that the foreign reliance on the drones, which where we are paying hefty amounts to the foreign players, that kind of gets eradicated. And like us, there are other drone players also who are investing very heavily. And what we expect out of the government is to just the ease of doing business. That is something which we are expecting in this budget. That when the budget comes out, the new tech space that it should go, because any defense-oriented companies, its survival is always very difficult in this industry. So to have that, the necessary help, necessary PLI schemes to be enhanced. If that happens, this industry.
Okay, I want to discuss this in detail with you. Okay. So I want to discuss this in detail with you because you say, okay, 1,000 companies. How many, anecdotally, so this is your best guess, how many, because you've been doing this for 5-6 years now, of these companies, how many companies are just traders that they go to China, buy the DJI drones and sell them in India for a margin? Okay, because there'll be a certain percentage of players who are doing just that. And how many are actually doing R&D, building their own drones?
So if I tell you how many are actually doing R&D, it would be only 25 to 30 companies actually who do it.
So the vast majority are just actually purchasing and they are reselling here. So a very small percentage are actually building drones. Is that roughly accurate?
You are absolutely right, because from ground up level, if you ask, then that is the actual number that I'm giving you.
Okay, you've seen the drones now even at the Republic Day parade. You saw it at the Army parade, okay? On Army Day. You learn from Ukraine, that's the future. All of us know it. It's staring us in the face. It's the drones. Okay. So this is going to be crucially important. So now let me pick on this without going into the details, which I'm sure you don't want to share, but just giving an overall picture. What kind of R&D are you capable of doing here? Is it software? Because is it on image stabilization? Is it on flying algorithms? What is it? Soft R&D, or do you actually do R&D on hardware also?
Of course, if you're doing ground up development, you're doing R&D in software, you're doing R&D in optics, you're doing R&D in material sciences. And now, with the industry 2.0, you have latest manufacturing techniques. Like we have benchmarking partners with companies like Markforged, Stratasys, and these are the companies which actually help you, make your imagination into reality. And, the go-to-market strategies are also changed. So you need to actually use the technology of today to manufacture the technology of tomorrow. Never to mention 3D printing has played a very vital role for the drone industry as well as the space industry. That is something which we are adapting at the moment. So we are doing hardware as well as software. So it's just not one thing because it's all interdependent.
So let me pick on that for a couple of more minutes, then I'll go back to my other guests for a more broader conversation. But this is really important. So now explain to people watching this broadcast, okay, what are the components does it take to R&D to build a drone, and not just a drone which is a cheap duplicate, but actually something that's better than what was before?
So basically, in R&D, first of all, that you need to do is you need to get reliability, because when you're sending it to the defense, reliability comes out of what materials do you choose to build it from, what electronic components, what is it shielding from, is it spoof proof, is it that what traces do those components have, are they manufactured in friendly countries? So you have to have all of that in place, because once you're putting anything into defense, it has to be it has to be foolproof from all angles. Not just performance, but from every aspect to the component level as well.
Okay, so let me break it down. Ladies and gentlemen, in a drone, you're going to need a battery system. Okay, you're going to need a chipset system, which is how the drone is going to operate. All right, you'll need motors. You're going to require cameras, and you're going to require communication hardware. Everything else is software. Communication hardware is how is it linking or sending a feedback to wherever the remote station is. So now, in terms of battery, we don't really make very good batteries in India at any scale. I'm talking about lithium ion, lithium phosphate batteries. They don't happen. When it comes to chipsets, we don't make them in India. Okay, rotors, motors, we can. Material science of cutting edge materials, we are not the best at. Okay, despite the fact that we make Navy ships, we're not the best at. When it comes to even communication chips, we don't really make them in India. So now that makes the job of Arpan Ghosh, who has to put all these things together, really difficult. Okay, so Arpan, reliably, so that just because the drone is not made in China doesn't mean a percentage of its components might not come from China. Okay, so how difficult does this make your life?
So first of all, as per the policies, you can't get drones from China and sell it into India. You can't get components. Yes. And so on and so forth. But this is a problem that even the world is facing. It's just not India which is facing these issues. So there are other countries where India has good friendly terms. They've started developing. We at our facility have started developing. The scale is not that big at the moment. But then again, we can proudly say that of course we are making it in India. We are not getting it from countries, sharing land and water bodies with India, just to be correct that way. So, every component, every aspect that we make has to be, at par with the international standards. So you are right that today we are not doing it, but we've picked up small, small, and component by component we are building it. So tomorrow we not only want to be a drone company which is just making drones, but we also want to become a company where we are also making our own components. Step by step, because these are very huge and heavily dependent onto R&D, battery manufacturing setup, maybe chipsets. You understand the amount of investment it goes in. So for even VCs to come and invest in us at that scale, it is going to take some time, but of course we'll be there.
Okay, so now that's the difficult part of the picture. Now let me give you the better part of the picture. The better part of the picture is India is starting lithium mining in Chhattisgarh. Okay, we're doing geological research currently in Leh Ladakh. Okay, so India's first lithium mine is about to start rolling. India's first lithium battery manufacturing companies in India have started rolling out. I know they're not gigawatt plants, but they've started rolling out. So in 2 to 3 years, you will have lithium from India with lithium batteries being made in India, and hopefully by then you'll also have sodium ion batteries and others. Okay, and that's the component. And if it's made in India, great news for Arpan. Okay. Next, he's going to need the chipsets. He's going to maybe want to design his own chipsets, but somebody will have to fab them, and that's happening in Gujarat now. That's happening in the Northeast, where India's first fabricators are now being built. Now, they're not going to be fabricators at the level that which TSMC is operating, which is now 3 nanometers or 4 nanometers. They won't be there, but it will be good enough for what Arpan is. So, even if they come down to 20, 30 nanometers, they'll be good enough for what he needs. Arpan, one last question. So for people watching the broadcast and they see a drone, they probably see it at the shadi, okay, or at some kind of photo shoot. What are those drones? I mean, those drones are certainly not made in India drones, are they?
No, they are surely not made in India because again, the photograph was operating it. If you sell them and made in India drone, it's anyways going to be way expensive than the Chinese drones that have entered into the market. So of course, they're not the real drones that are made in India. They're just they get it from places and they fly. So that's not the correct impression of the drone that we make. What we make in India.
Okay, last question. Okay, I'm sorry. I really want to get into this because it's fascinating. But on an overall picture, I know you can't share specifics with me, but when we talk drones in defense, there are UAVs which actually have missiles on them, right? And they can fire and shoot stuff, right? Then there are the kinds of jugaad things which have been done in Ukraine, that you take a drone and you, with a rassi, hang a grenade from it, and it's a suicide drone. All right, it's a cheap thing. You use it to blow up a tank. Are we looking at basically use cases on surveillance, or are we actually looking at fighting capacities? What's the future out there?
So the future is very simple. The forces are looking into surveillance. They're looking into drones with RCWS, which is remote controlled weapon system. Then they are looking at suicidal drones, which are which are kamikazes, and then they are looking at loitering ammunition. So these are the things. Plus, we're getting into non-contact warfare. So drone is of course going to play a very vital role.
Yeah, that's the future. And I know, General Butt, can I get you to wear a different hat for a minute? Okay, in an era where the armored brigades and the tanks are now seeming superfluous, because it's all about pressing a button and either a missile hits the other side, or you send a drones. And he's mentioned loitering. Loitering is that if your drone has a long capacity, a UAV that can run for 24 hours, is just operating on that site forever, because you have no fatigue of any individual sitting on board that aircraft. You don't have any refueling problems. Drone warfare, sir, it's high-tech stuff. It's already here. So is there a drone industry here then?
Like Arpan said, there is a large gap between capability which the armed forces would aspire for and what is existing. And like very truly you said, the sources of most of the drones which are there belong to a country which we are not very friendly with. We have to be what Atmanirbharta, some place where it is definitely required is in the drone sector. And that has to manifest in chipsets, batteries, motors, all the components.
Yeah.
Work has started into this, and I'm very sure in a few years, with the incentives which the government is providing, we will have indigenous capabilities.
There are three things you need to nail. The chipset, most important, because that's where the security risk lies. It's not in the battery per se, it's in the chipset. So chipset you have to nail. Then you have to nail the battery, and number three is the material science. You nail these three things, and Arpan and company can write the algos. Okay, they'll figure out stabilization and all that. So that's what we're good at as a country, right? So we've got that sorted. But the first three things you need to sort out. I again repeat, if anybody who is in a position of policy, we need the chipset, we need the battery, and we need the material science, the composite materials that are going to make these light drones that can fly forever. We get these three things right, the Indian entrepreneur can do the rest. One Chinese company, DJI, 70% of the global market. Those are all the cheap drones that you see operating, and they're really cheap and they're really good. And that's the problem. Okay, that's the problem. Cheap and good. That's the problem why BYD is outselling Tesla in the Chinese market. So now let me get a different perspective and rope back Tarun into this conversation. Tarun, do we still have him? Okay, Tarun, now we are talking frontline sectors. Okay, now you is in a consultancy. Are you guys observing these things? Defense, space, drones, 3D printing, are you observing these things as future sectors?
No, definitely. See, these are the future sectors, and even in our consultancy divisions, there are separate sectors that have been kind of created, and different experts are being there to kind of address to this kind of a market. And definitely, and the reason major consultancy have created these sectors are because of the demands, because of the obviously the government's focus for investing into these sectors, and this is definitely a future. And as Arpan General Saab has called out, that see, lots of investments, focus of the government is there. We want to make in India, and this will not only just create India as Atmanirbhar, but also from an employment generation perspective.
Okay, but Tarun, I'm trying to ask, I'm trying to ask a different question. So help me out. Okay, so when you speak to people, right, and this can just be a personal anecdote, not the position of Deloitte, of course, but when you speak to people and they want to make an investment, right, everything you see right now is the guy trying to figure out the next Nika, okay, which are product oriented or retail oriented or app oriented. Are we seeing venture capitalists out there, both NRIs or Indians, who are going, what's the new coolest tech? The people, these are the people who say, that's the Satya Nadella who says that I'm going to put $80 billion into AI over the next 5 years. Okay. Are the VCs looking for the next coolest tech, or are they still looking for the next coolest product or retail or brand?
So tech is of course taking a step in the sense that most of the VCs are sort of really keen in investing into techs, AIs, and also into these drone sectors, space sectors. So definitely, Rishabh, you're right. So these are the sectors that are kind of.
So they are looking. So now let me get a reverse perspective and get Arpan back in. Arpan, you might not be looking for investment. I don't know, right? But in the space, are you seeing people who are coming out, the big heavyweights, the guys who got the money and other venture capitalists, okay, the guys who do private equity placements, and they're going, whoa, bro, drone is going to be big, it's going to be $100 billion sector in 10 years because defense itself will be $100 billion, let alone the commercial place. These days, you can replace fireworks with drone shows. Okay, everybody eventually is going to have a drone in their house. It's inevitable that this is going to happen, right? So, are you seeing venture capitalists out there as excited about tech in India as they are in places like the States?
No, they are very much excited for sure, that is there, but only with the right company. So they do their all proper due diligence before they come and invest in you. And as a tech company, you're always looking for investments. It's like even if you have enough money, you'll be wanting more to create more, invest more into R&D, because it's a rapid growing industry where even the technology is not changing on year basis. It's month on month, and sometimes it's day on day. So it keeps depending. So the more money you raise, the better strength you build, because the better R&D, the better things you're able to get into the market. And of course, increasing the scale, you will be coming, but today, if I say, you just pointed out in your conversation that DJI drones are cheaper. Today, with our scale, we are also able to match the pricing and, get better or same quality, where the customer is not comparing the price anymore. So that can only happen when you have more money, scale, and, you'll have to keep raising money. Tech companies do work on that space. And of course, also give good returns to your investors.
It is possible, and economies of scale matter, right? Because 10 years ago, we decided as a country that we want to go LED bulb, okay? Makes a lot of sense. Nirmala Sitharaman on your screens arriving at the finance ministry. So it makes a lot of sense, right? So government of India said, you know what, we're going to go to the manufacturing sector in this country, and they say, we are going to place an order for 750 million LED bulbs. Who wants to set up a factory? And people came and set up factories, and now we have the cheapest LED bulbs in the world, okay? And pretty much everybody watching this telecast, pretty much everybody sitting on this telecast with me, if they look up, it's an LED bulb. It's happened so fast, okay? It's not an incandescent bulb, it's not a CFL, it's an LED strip or an LED bulb. So it is possible. Economies of scale do matter. That's what the Chinese are very good at. Now let me take a different perspective in from Dr. Anjali. Now Dr. Anjali is, of course, teaching economics. Now, Dr. Anjali, when we are talking about frontline education, and you said you want to see more investment in education, and I can tell you that people coming out of educational institutes, not necessarily the most employable. I have jobs available, I take interviews every week, and people who want to be journalists will not be able to tell you what India's GDP is, okay? And they want to cover the budget. And I find that very strange, because we've had 16 years of education. But I want to ask a different perspective to you. As educators, the front line in education is going to be what Arpan is doing, material science. It's going to be setting up 1,000 GPUs so that the students can actually experiment with LLM models. Are we seeing institutes do this kind of investment, or is it simply make a classroom, put a projector, get a teacher and hope for the best?
No, in fact, higher education has moved way beyond chalk and talk or even smart boards. Today, the national education policy also focuses a lot on providing skill-based education. However, the challenge in front of universities today or in front of higher education institutions, in fact, is investment. Where do we get the funding to provide such skill-based education from? So the requirement is now twofold. One is that we need support from not just the government but also from the industry. And that is because we need to provide this education to the students who are the leaders of tomorrow. If you want Arpan's company to do well, on one hand, yes, we just now talked a lot about lithium, about the batteries, about the material sciences. What about the people who will do all this? You need to have skilled labor in the economy, and to provide that, I feel the academic institutions need to buck up and provide that kind of support to our students who are, of course, the leaders of tomorrow.
Okay, but are you
for
seeing this
that,
happen?
We need
Because
to establish, if I can just take
yeah,
10
please,
seconds.
please finish.
We need to establish centers of excellence, especially
That was going to be my
in emerging
question.
areas like artificial intelligence or the drone technology or space technology that we are talking about. So
okay, so
that is
in
where
the
we are
biggest self-interest of the biggest industrialist, okay, so if you are Geo, all right, you already have the megahertz spectrum, you've got the apps, you've got the content, you've got the retail store, but you also want to make your own phone, why not? Okay, not buy it from China. You also want to make your own 6G equipment. You got to design it. You got to design the chips that are going to communicate at the high rates of pace that 6G operates. So do you then go to MIT University in Pune, okay, which is actually a genuine bona fide, they do exchange programs with the guys in the US, okay. So do you go there and say, I am going to make a center of excellence for communication technologies, I'm going to give you $100 million, and then the pool that you graduate every year, those are the people I hire, right? Is that happening, Dr. Anjali, where these guys are not going, not to give donation, not philanthropy? I'm not saying, oh, it's I was an alumni of this college, so I'm going back and sir, I will, aapke 10, you plant 10 trees in my name and aap mujhse 1 crore le lijiye. Not that. I'm talking about people who want to invest with a self-interest. Ki, yeah, this labor is going to be ours. Are we seeing that happening?
Yes, we are definitely seeing a change where the industry now wants to give back to the academia, and we do have alumni who are coming back and helping us in setting up centers of excellence. If I speak about my own institution at MIT World Peace University, we do have a center of excellence in artificial intelligence, which is set up with the support of our alumni, of course. And they are providing, the center, of course, is providing a lot of education in the domains which are in the current demand in the economy. Especially when I speak about, I mean, there's a lot of conversation going on about space technology. I'm very happy to share with all of you that recently the satellite which was launched did carry a payload from the MIT World Peace University, which was developed by our students by themselves.
Yeah,
and
we interviewed those kids. Yes, I remember. Yes.
So it was a very proud moment where we are actually.
Okay, but ma'am, the problem I'm seeing, and I take a lot of interest in these things. So the problem I'm seeing is that when we say Center of Excellence in Artificial Intelligence, we mean a room and a computer. Okay, are we talking that we have a server set up with with 100 GPUs capable of processing some LLMs? Are we realistically talking that?
We are moving in that direction, but as I said, we need support from the industry for that, because academia by itself will not be able to provide that kind of funding only from the fees that we are able to generate as revenue.
Yes.
For that, we need support, and not just from the government, because we are relying even on private investment from the industry. Government can, of course, provide support in the form of tax rebates to the industries which are providing this kind of support to academia.
Okay, this is my question, right? What you need is a philanthropist, people out there watching this broadcast. You need to go to the universities and not give them a room and a pankha. Okay, you need to give them I'm going to give you 150, 90 NVIDIA GPUs, all right, and I'm going to get you somebody who's going to tell you how to use them. Now you need muscle power of the hardware to get this done, okay? Because that's what the future is, right? The LLM learning models and how they are adapted is human intervention. We are designing them, okay? We are teaching computers how to learn themselves, like teaching children how to learn themselves. But after that, it's the muscle power of the GPU that has to run those models into the trillions of computations. That is just the GPU. So don't go set up a building. Provide this infrastructure. So now let me put that thought to Arpan from a different perspective. Okay, Arpan, now when you are going in hiring people, right, there will be traditional sets of mechanical engineers, chemical engineers, electrical engineers. Okay, how many people are coming out with the particular skill set that you require, or are you basically trying to hire them and then you have to teach them what needs to get done?
So the model that we are working on is we have ties with a lot of colleges where we go and we hire, we get interns. We tell them you're going to be serious for next 6 months. We're going to hire you at this X value, which will be more than the market. So that is where you generate interest. But right out of the college, you're not getting mindsets who will just come and start working on the drone technology. Because what is being taught versus what is required as per the industry standards, there's still a very big gap. And as you know, being in the industry, you would require more people to work, so you'll have to bridge that gap by teaching people how what to learn, what to unlearn, and learning and unlearning is a big process that goes into when you want to hire people in the drone sector or in this this space tech.
So now I'm just going to give a thought experiment, and Arpan, help me out here. A thought experiment. I'm going to wish you very well, and I'm going to wish that you become that $1 billion, $10 billion company, because the potential is there. If you get it right, the market is there. It's inevitable that this is going to happen in the next 10 years. Okay, so let's say you become the unicorn, right? And now you have money, and you want to invest in the ecosystem of human resource in this country, and we take you to the IIT Delhi campus. What is it that you would want to build there in terms of learning, a center of excellence in drones? What would you want to see them doing?
The first thing that I want to do is basically what is there in the industry, make that available so that whatever is happening, they already have it. And now from there, they have to build it above and how you can make a system better, faster, stronger, how you can reduce the power, how you can increase the power, reduce the area, means the size, and how the speeds are going up. So these are the actual areas that we want to work in, and we want to help a lot of institutes, not just IITs. There are other institutes that we work with, and we want to give them the money, the right platform, so that this eventually, where the industry and academia work hand in glove, things will go for a better thing.
So what you're going to have to do, Arpan, when we become a unicorn, okay, is go to, and don't go to IIT, okay, go to some other college, right? Everybody just goes to IIT. Go to some other college and tell them, I am going to help you set up a facility in which you can actually make your carbon fiber and mold it, okay? I'm going to actually get you the 3D printers in which you can do metal printing, aluminum printing, type, other kinds of metal printing. I'm going to get you the CNC machines. This is the stuff that the colleges need. It's not a camera with a fan, okay? This is the stuff that is required, right? Then you need the computing power, just the computing power to test, because I promise you, even in Arpan's industry, a large part of even the testing is not going to be a guy sitting in a field with a remote control. It's going to be virtual simulated testing of models, of airfoils, okay, of avionics. So all of this is going to be simulated testing. Computers will produce simulations to test the product. This is going to be hard compute power. So if you can think about it, go to the university near you and give them a bank of GPUs, guys, okay? That's what Trump and Nadella and Sam are doing, okay? And if you think that the Chinese have done some miracle, guess they've not, okay? The miracle tells you that the Communist Party is the best thing in the world. That's what DeepSeek says. Okay, now hang a second, we've done high tech. Let me come to the basics, because there is a truism that was started at the beginning of this conversation by Bhavesh Kothari, that you guys can discuss your drones and discuss everything. For the vast majority of us, the single biggest asset we have is our house. It's the truth. So Bhavesh Kothari, for many, many years, real estate was a headache in this country because there was a bubble. Too many projects not getting completed, people getting stuck, then we are in RERA and then this and that. Is that problem over? Can we hear him? PCR?
Hello, can you hear me?
Bhavesh, go ahead. Yes.
Perfect. Yes. So, Rishabh, exactly after RERA is where the confidence in under construction properties have come in. Under construction is the only way to invest in real estate and make money. Thank to the government that after RERA, I am able to give confidence to my buyers that, sir, this project is RERA approved. You don't need to worry because government takes care of everything else. In case there's a delay, in case there's a legal issue in the problem, none of those things were problem. I mean, pre-RERA, people would invest in land and they'll figure out, oh, land is stuck in litigation. Projects are not getting completed for 15 years and they've paid the entire money. All those problems have gone. Now, real estate is a major investment for a lot of people in middle class to build wealth. I mean, all the panelists over here, you yourself, me, whoever is watching has a real estate investment. They may not have investment in gold or stocks, equities, right? It's building us wealthier as the country is growing. So as you're talking about the GDP growing, it increases the real estate value, the real estate portfolio increases. Today, if somebody invested 1 crore by taking a 50 lakh loan and 50 lakh of their own savings, it's going to become 2.5, 3 crores in few years down the line, depending on how good the GDP grows. And that is where your next generation, what you pass on is a 3 crore of wealth, not just a 50 lakh, because you had 50 lakh and you made 3 crore out of it. You can use leverage in real estate, which you cannot use anywhere else. So real estate is very, very important and government needs to focus on real estate as a sector.
So couple of questions. When we are saying it's important, there'll be people who want to buy a house to live in. Then there'll be people who want to buy a house to flip. Then there'll be people who want to buy a house for long-term rental. All of these things, all of these things make up the market, right? So where is the market now? Are we seeing, is it still that, the biggest buck is to be made in Bombay and Delhi, which are really big real estate markets? In Bombay, I mean, 1 BHK is crazy amounts of money. Or are we seeing it happen in Lucknow and Prayagraj and all the other places?
It has gone to multiple cities. So today you see the top developers of India, Godrej, etc. They are going to places like Lucknow, Indore, Surat, Jaipur. Now this is, the tier 2 cities is where a lot of demand for real estate is, and per square feet rate in these cities have touched 8 to 9,000 rupees a square feet, right? Which used to be 4,000 rupees a square feet. So of course there's a lot of demand in these cities. There's a lot of development happening in these cities. The infrastructure, the government, which is the infrastructure development which is happening thanks to government, is helping these cities grow and is helping the real estate grow, and in turn it's helping people grow their own wealth by investing in real estate, because real estate is land at the end of it. You call it apartments, you call it office spaces, villas, whatever, but it is land, and land is scarce. It will grow. Today a land which is 1,000 rupees a square feet will become 10,000 in few years. It may take 5 years, 10 years, I don't know, but it is bound to become. That's how history has been.
How does it pan out in high rises? Because if I buy an apartment in a high rise I mean, it's not a plot of land. So in 20 years down, 30 years down the line, 40 years down the line, how does it become a generational opportunity? Because I have a plot of land, it's a generational opportunity. I can do whatever I want with it. I can't break down a high rise unless everybody agrees. So how is that a generational opportunity?
So, a plot of land you cannot buy on your own. The developer will buy and build high-rise building because he's there to pay much more money for an acre of land in Bangalore.
But I get it. Like I say, if I own a house and a plot of land, I get it, right? I can hand it over to my children. But if I own an apartment, right, and the apartment building, who knows what the state of the building will be in 40 years from now, right? So how do we look at that as an investment?
Look at Bombay, then there's a redevelopment happening. So land, you get undivided share with every apartment building also, right? So if it's a 1 acre of land and there are 20 apartments on that, each of them, as government rule, gets an undivided share, which is 20%, 5%, 7% based on your papers, the land share in that. So when it goes in the redevelopment, you're still passing it on. However, we tell everyone to buy from renowned developers because quality, nobody compromises nowadays for the brand in renowned developers. So you have the best developers out there who are giving qualities for 50, 60 years. Nothing is going to happen to those buildings, right? We've seen I'm staying in a building which is 25-year-old and it's amazing, right? So none of these things are a problem anymore, but you have to sell it at a certain point of time also if it's an apartment, right?
Couple of questions. I need to take a break, and I want to leave a last word with Tarun as well. So couple of questions. When we go abroad, right, we see houses available, fine. You want to take a home loan, great, you pay 2%. 3% interest on that home loan. What's the average home loan rate right now, as we are speaking, Bhavesh, for most ordinary people?
8%.
Okay, 8%. So 8%, if you got a good record, and you're lucky, 8% is what you're going to pay on average. Now that's a chunk of change. That's 4x what you would be paying in interest if you were in the US. So that's expensive. So my obvious question is, Bhavesh Kothari, what do you want from government? What do you want Nirmala ji to do in a couple of hours?
Please let us, all of us, buy houses, invest in houses, and build wealth. Reduce the home loan interest rates. Do not keep it with the normal FD rates or bank rates. Home loan interest rates have to be sub 6% so people can invest and build wealth for their future generations and not worry about the inflation and other things where at the end of it, you're going to save money for retirement, right? But I think real estate is the only way you can save and build wealth by the time you retire, and that home loan interest rate has to come down.
So I'm going to ask this question to Tarun. I'm assuming he thought this was the first and only question I would ask him, but I'm coming into right to the end. What are budget expectations, Tarun? What do you want to see from the finance minister?
So see, a lot has already been called out by Kohli ji and all. So, but see, I'll give you a different perspective. So I want an overhauling from a TDS perspective. While the rate rationalization has already been done, but my expectation would be, say, from an NRI perspective, a lot of if a buyer is purchasing properties from NRI sellers, then a huge, humongous task of taking a TAN number and all those things is there. So my suggestion would be you have to change it, align it with if you're purchasing that from a resident taxpayer. So that is one of the expectation, and also from the return filing. See, once you have to file a return within 30 days, I mean, you have to say e-verify it. So that's a very short amount of time for people who are sitting overseas NRIs and they do not have Aadhaar numbers, and OTPs could be a challenge. At least that time frame should be increased. Plus, for the salaried class, this 45-day window, once that Form 16 is issued, is pretty short. And most of the times there could happen that some of the incomes get overlooked within that 45-day window if you are earning incomes from, say, overseas and all. At least that time limit should be increased to, say, till August and all. Yeah.
Okay, so practical, devil in detail kind of adjustments. Tarun is not saying please just let's have no income tax in India. Okay, I was hoping somebody would say that, but we have a very pragmatist, realistic people here. I would have said it, no income tax. Let's do one up on Trump. Make the world's first country that abolishes income tax. Wouldn't that be nice? We are all smiling. We're all laughing because we know that's not going to happen. All right, I'm going to take a break. See you guys in a minute. Thank you to all my guests. It's been a very interesting conversation across the board, in detail and larger picture. Back in a couple of minutes. Stay with us.
ਪਿਛਲੀ ਵਾਰ 8 ਘੰਟੇ ਵਾਲੀ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਚੋਂ ਕੋਈ ਕੱਟ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਕੱਟ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਤਾਂ ਛੱਡੋ ਬੱਲਬ ਨੇ ਝਮੱਕਾ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਾਰਨਾ ਝਮੱਕਾ
ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਵੀ ਬਿੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਂਦਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਇਹ ਉਪਰਾਲਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ
ਜੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਸੀਐਮ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਹਰੇਕ ਵਰਗ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਸਾਰੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵਾਅਦੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਪੂਰੇ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਸਾਡਾ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਦਾ ਬਿੱਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਏ ਉਹ ਜ਼ੀਰੋ ਆਇਆ ਏ
ਮੈਂ ਇੱਕ ਦਿਹਾੜੀਦਾਰ ਬੰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਿੱਲ ਭਰਨਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਔਖਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਿੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਭਰਨਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਇਸ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਤੇ ਮਾਣ ਹੈ
ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ 600 ਯੂਨਿਟ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਫੈਸਲਾ ਲਿਆ ਸੀ 90% ਘਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਹਦਾ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਅਸੀਂ ਭ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਟਾਚਾਰ ਰੋਕਿਆ ਅਸੀਂ ਰੈਵਨਿਊ ਦੇ ਹੋਰ ਸਾਧਨ ਵਧਾਏ ਨੇ ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਮਿਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇੰਡਸਟਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ
ਮੇਰਾ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਦਾ ਬਿੱਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ 1 ਸਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਆਵਾ ਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਵੀ 1 ਸਾਲ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਵੀ ਆਂਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਜਦ ਆਹ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਦੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਬਣੀ ਆ ਜੀ
ਮੁੰਡਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਛੋਟਾ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਪਿਛਲੀ ਵਾਰੀ ਬਿੱਲ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਆਇਆ ਤਾਂ ਮਾਂ 3500 ਰੁਪਈਆ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਐਤਕੀ ਜ਼ੀਰੋ ਆਇਆ ਮਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਐਸਾ ਮੁੱਖ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਪੂਰੇ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਬਣਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਏ
खाने में कोई स्वाद नहीं है
अरे किफायती लाल सस्ते वाले दाल मसाले स्वाद हुआ बेकार इधर कीमती लाल को देखो खाना बना कमाल NewsX की हल्दी मिर्ची धनिया करे कमाल ये रंग दे ये खुशबू दे ये तीखा ये कम पड़े क्या निराला NewsX मसाला
उत्तर प्रदेश के लोगों की सुरक्षा उनके भरोसे और कानून व्यवस्था को बेहतर बनाने की सेवा में सतत लगे पुलिस कर्मियों के लिए योगी सरकार हर कदम पर मदद को तैयार है। उत्तर प्रदेश की योगी सरकार न सिर्फ देश पर मर मिटने वाले शहीदों का सम्मान करती है बल्कि सेवारत पुलिस कर्मियों का भी खास ख्याल रखती है।
मृतक पुलिस कार्मिकों के आश्रितों की सहायता के लिए 9 करोड़ 8 लाख रुपए।
पुलिस स्मृति कार्यक्रम 2024 में मुख्यमंत्री योगी आदित्यनाथ ने यूपी पुलिस के लिए कई बड़ी घोषणाएं की। सभी जिलों के पुलिस कर्मियों की सुख सुविधा के लिए 3.5 करोड़ रुपए, सेवारत रिटायर पुलिस कर्मियों उनके आश्रितों के मेडिकल प्रतिपूर्ति का निस्तारण, 266 मामले के निस्तारण के लिए 30,56,000 रुपए, शहीदों को श्रद्धांजलि, आश्रितों को राहत का ऐलान। यूपी के 115 शहीदों के आश्रितों को 36 करोड़ 20 लाख रुपए की आर्थिक मदद। योगी सरकार शहीदों के आश्रितों को आर्थिक मदद के साथ ही शहीद परिवारों के बच्चों की शिक्षा का जिम्मा भी उठाती है। सम्मान पूर्वक जीवन यापन के लिए शहीद परिवार के एक सदस्य को सरकारी नौकरी भी देती है यूपी सरकार।
MDH की देगी मिर्च,
देगी मिर्च का तड़का, अंग अंग फड़का।
MDH की देगी मिर्च।
MDH का किचन किंग किचन में हो तो हम सब कुछ बना सकते हैं। बैंगन का भरता, आलू गोभी, भिंडी मसाला और भी बहुत कुछ।
MDH 13 जनवरी पौष पूर्णिमा से 26 फरवरी महाशिवरात्रि तक महाकुंभ 2025 का साक्षी बन रहा है प्रयागराज का संगम तट। 45 दिनों तक चलने वाले पृथ्वी के सबसे बड़े मानव समागम में करोड़ों श्रद्धालु पुण्य की डुबकी लगाकर बन रहे हैं सांस्कृतिक एकता के सहभागी। यशस्वी प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी के मार्गदर्शन और माननीय मुख्यमंत्री योगी आदित्यनाथ के कुशल नेतृत्व से महाकुंभ बना है दिव्य, भव्य, डिजिटल। कुंभ सहायक चैटबॉट ने 11 भाषाओं में हर सेवा की जानकारी देकर एकता के महासंगम को बनाया है स्वच्छ, सुरक्षित, सुव्यवस्थित। नए घाट, रिवर फ्रंट रोड, पांटून पुल, फ्लाईओवर, चमचमाती सड़कें, पार्किंग, हजारों बस और ट्रेन, नवीन एयरपोर्ट टर्मिनल, आधुनिक टेंट सिटी जैसी सुविधाओं से पुण्य स्नान हुआ है आसान। महाकुंभ का है अटल संदेश, एकजुट हो अपना देश।
खाने में कुछ स्वाद नहीं है।
अरे किफायती लाल सस्ते वाले दाल मसाले स्वाद हुआ बेकार। इधर कीमती लाल को देखो खाना बना कमाल। MDH की हल्दी मिर्ची धनिया करे कमाल। ये रंग दे, ये खुशबू दे, ये तीखा, ये कम पड़े। क्या निराला MDH मसाला।
पिछली बार 8 घंटे वाली बिजली चो कोई कट लग्या नहीं लग्या। ਕੱਟ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਤਾਂ ਛੱਡੋ, ਬੱਲਬ ਨੇ ਝਮੱਕਾ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਾਰਨਾ, ਝਮੱਕਾ।
ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਵੀ ਬਿੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਂਦਾ। ਅਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਇਹ ਉਪਰਾਲਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ।
ਜੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਸੀਐਮ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਜੀ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਹਰੇਕ ਵਰਗ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਸਾਰੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵਾਅਦੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਪੂਰੇ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਸਾਡਾ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਦਾ ਬਿੱਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਏ ਉਹ ਜ਼ੀਰੋ ਆਇਆ ਏ।
ਮੈਂ ਇੱਕ ਦਿਹਾੜੀਦਾਰ ਬੰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਿੱਲ ਭਰਨਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਔਖਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਿੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਭਰਨਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਇਸ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਤੇ ਮਾਣ ਹੈ।
ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ 600 ਯੂਨਿਟ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਫੈਸਲਾ ਲਿਆ ਸੀ। 90% ਘਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਹਦਾ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੋਇਆ। ਅਸੀਂ ਭ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਟਾਚਾਰ ਰੋਕਿਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਰੈਵਨਿਊ ਦੇ ਹੋਰ ਸਾਧਨ ਵਧਾਏ ਨੇ, ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਮਿਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇੰਡਸਟਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ।
ਮੇਰਾ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਦਾ ਬਿੱਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ 1 ਸਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਆਵਾ ਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਵੀ 1 ਸਾਲ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਵੀ ਆਂਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਜਦ ਆ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਦੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਬਣੀ ਆ ਜੀ।
ਮੁੰਡਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਛੋਟਾ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਪਿਛਲੀ ਵਾਰੀ ਬਿੱਲ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਆਇਆ ਤਾਂ ਮਾਂ 3500 ਰੁਪਈਆ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਐਤਕੀ ਜ਼ੀਰੋ ਆਇਆ। ਮਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਐਸਾ ਮੁੱਖ ਮੰਤਰੀ ਪੂਰੇ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਬਣਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਏ।
MDH की देगी मिर्च,
देगी मिर्च का तड़का, अंग अंग फड़का।
MDH की देगी मिर्च।
From the banks of the holy Ganga, where millions gather in devotion, the spectacle of spirituality,
केजरीवाल जी जरा अपने झूठ के जाल में थोड़े लपेट में आ गए।
जितने भी देश के भ्रष्ट लोग थे वो बीजेपी में जाके संत बन गए। एवरीबडी वांट्स टू गेट देयर ओन टैक्स रेवेन्यूज बैक एंड दिस इज आम आदमी पार्टीज पर्सनल टैक्स।
पीपल आर सेइंग सोमनाथ जी बी रेस्ट एश्योर्ड विल गिव यू अनदर चांस।
चुनाव जो है मैं नहीं लड़ रहा, यहाँ की जनता लड़ रही है और जनता ही यहाँ पे मुझे विधायक के रूप में देखना चाहती है।
66% of you feel that the roads in
MDH का किचन किंग किचन में हो तो हम सब कुछ बना सकते हैं। बैंगन का भरता, आलू गोभी, भिंडी मसाला और भी बहुत कुछ।
MDH. From the banks of the holy Ganga, where millions gather in devotion.
All right, welcome back. We are having a rolling conversation because let's face it, the vast majority of us watching television today and are waiting for the finance minister's speech in just under 2 hours from now. You want to know two things. Okay, the two things are what's going to happen to the taxes and what's going to happen to the stock market. Okay, because everything else is then very sectoral. It's devil in the detail. It's a 0.2% here and a 0.3% here and a few hundred crores here. When the big ticket announcements happen, those are primarily the government saying this is what our priority focus areas are. Okay, or if you say 1 lakh crores in infrastructure, that's just telling you that's your priority focus area. That doesn't it only when it translates to every bridge, every road, does it make a difference to your particular life. Okay, so for most people on a budget day where anyway GST is out of the ambit of the budget, right? It's about direct taxes, and the reason direct taxes are important, and I've been pointing this out since I started this telecast and before this. So 150 crore people in this country, right? 30%, 40% of them are not going to be in an earning age. Now take all the rest, and about 8 crore tax returns are filed. Of the 8 crore tax returns are filed, about 60-70% people don't pay taxes. They're filing a return, but they don't come under taxation slabs. So we're looking at 2% of the country, just 2% of the country, of the people. So about 3 crore people, 2.5, 3 crore people. 2.5, 3 crore people contribute 10 lakh crores in direct taxes. Individual taxpayers pay for 25% of the budgetary expenses, which are going to be around the 45-50 lakh crore mark. That's what the finance minister is about to announce. Okay, and that's the conundrum because lesson tells us that the biggest companies, it might not be true only of India, it's true of the United States, it's true of Europe. There'll be some Cayman Islands head office in which you will be paying. So let me start a company and let me call it Rishabh Enterprises. Okay, and I don't know if there's a company by that name. Okay, I will start a company in the Bahamas, and the company will be trademarked in the Bahamas. So I'll be running operations here, but I will pay a trademark licensing fee to that company in the Bahamas, which is my expenditure. So I'll show a loss. So I don't pay taxes. Okay. A lot of the biggest businessmen, the guys who are in the Rolls Royces and wearing 10 crore rupee watches, okay, they don't own anything. The house is in the company's name, the car is in the company's name, the private jet is in the company's name, the fuel for the private jet is an expense you're writing off. So you don't really pay hefty personal taxes. So for the people who earn salaries and pay tax, and then every time you buy something, pay tax. If you invest something, if you invest in a fixed deposit, if you take away your tax and your inflation, you are almost at a zero or negative return in a fixed deposit. So these are real people's problems for real people. And of course, for the rest of us, if you have a SIP somewhere, yeah, the stock market matters. So let me pick up this conversation and let's see where we can get on this, because the devil in the detail matters, but there's an overall picture. On the broadcast with us, Major General Brajesh Kumar is with us. He's the former DG of Military Engineering. We're going to discuss defense with him. Vinod Raval is with us. Vishal Khurma is with us. He is the CEO of Voxin University. Rohit Garg from Shardur Amarchand Mangaldas, and Gautam Mukherjee with us. Gautam ji, let me start you. Give us some Aam Aadmi perspective. So you are the quintessential everyman. You are not wearing a 10 crore rupee watch and driving in a private jet. But of course, nor are you lining up on the streets for government ration. So as the quintessential middle class everyman, are you hoping on something special, or do you also share the same frustrations even though you're a fan of the government?
I think there may be some relaxation
in the bottom of the pile. As you pointed out, 8 lakh file taxes.
Yeah, 8 crore.
8 crore. 2 crore pay the taxes. And that 2 crore amounts to 25% of the revenue budget. Now, the further relaxation for the bottom of the pile is not going to materially affect this collection, but will go a long way to enthuse people. In other words, if you make up to 10 lakhs exempt, it is going to make a lot of people very happy. 80% of the people are going to be very happy. The stock market is going to receive it with great enthusiasm. Consumption money will be available to that extent, at least psychologically speaking. And you're none the worse off in terms of balancing the numbers that you got last year compared to this year, even after giving this away.
Okay, but is there a frustration, okay, that the middle class salaried people, okay, pensioned people, nobody's vote bank, okay, and I don't understand why, but nobody's vote bank. So if you are an agriculturalist driving a Mercedes, and a lot of politicians, by the way, are agriculturalists, okay, they own large land banks, and everything is written as agriculture income, you pay no tax, okay. I know agriculturalists who drive Mercedes, okay. These are not your poor farmers, these are the guys who have thousands of bigas, okay, and they pay no income tax, nothing, all right. And even if they have some side income, it's all agricultural income as far as they are concerned. So is there a frustration for the rest of us? Hey, what the heck? Come on, that's not fair.
Well, Rishabh, the way I console myself is indirect taxes. Every Johnny in this country, including the foreigners, pay indirect taxes on everything except the air you breathe. And for all you know, that's coming next. So indirect taxes do mop up from everybody. The fact that the agricultural sector is exempt is historical, because in colonial times and in Mughal times before that, these were the people, the riots, the peasants, who paid all the taxes. They were coerced and they were grindingly poor, but they paid all the taxes that kept the Maharajas in business, the colonials in business, the Mughals in business. So for them to be exempt now is not surprising. To reverse this in any, sort of political way is not going to be easy.
Okay, or no, not going to be easy. So yes, we have to be realists, but what's the harm in being dreamers? The country was built on the shoulders of dreamers. So yes, what you're going to at best see is probably an incremental small adjustment here and there. Frankly, my father's a chartered accountant, and but I've been covering budgets for 15 years, right? So I keep telling him that, I do this and I have all the best people sitting with me. So, I have a more than passing knowledge of what's going on. But if you try to convince me that the new tax policy simplified the tax code and that I can simply say that up to 7 lakhs I paid no taxes or 7.5 lakhs I paid no taxes, that's not true. It's only if you invest in a certain mechanism under a certain section that is true. Okay, so that's not a simplification of the tax code. But that's the goal. They want to simplify it. But nor are we looking at, hey, let's just abolish income tax, or let's just have one unified tax rate, or let's get rid of all these exemptions and just make it 10%. And that's the difficult onion. Vinod Raval, okay, in a realistic sense, incremental adjustments end up only complicating the tax code, when wisdom tells us the simpler it is, the better it is for everyone. At the same time, the government wants something that's revenue, or rather revenue neutral. So they'll say, okay, we got 10,000 crores last year, as long as we get the same, we can make an adjustment. Can the finance minister do something special, or is it just going to be incremental here and there?
Well,
let Vinodji take that. Vinod Raval.
Yeah.
Good morning. Rishabh, the thing is, basically, it is going in the news for last 1 month that finance minister is going to exempt 15 lakhs rupees income. But I think you and me both know, I think we both are sitting here for the last 6-7 years and looking at all. So the thing is, yes, finance minister can do it. There are options available because lots of taxpayers are in zero bracket. They are not paying any taxes. Last year also, they made it for 7 lakhs rupees. But we all know how this 7 lakhs is there. The moment it is 7 lakh, 1 rupee, you have to pay tax from 2.5 lakhs rupees, not from 7. So there are areas available from where she will bring out the money. She have already taxed capital gains. So it's very easy. They are getting a good chunk of money from the equity market, STT as well as capital gain taxes, which is now being taxed at 15%. So yes, we are expecting some basic exemption limit to go on as new direct tax code is expected, and all the exemption deductions, which the sections you were referring to, has already been taken away. Housing has been, if you really consider section 24 rebate of 2 lakh rupees, that is now a peanut, and that has also been taken away in this new regime. So we are expecting some exemptions on the basis of this, because everybody is going to have a house, and without loan, house cannot be bought by a middle class person. So interest element will be added to this 7 lakhs. So we are expecting at least 10 lakhs rupees basic exemption should be there, and the tax rationalizations are certainly expected this time, because it's a 15 lakhs rupees with, if you really consider with the inflation index and all that. Like other countries, they can connect it with the inflation, this capital inflation index. Every year they are coming out. So let's hope some changes. You can call it a cosmetic changes, but I think in new direct tax code, they are going to simplify the law. The interpretation has to be with examples and formulas, so it's easy to understand and litigations get reduced. So I'm expecting this budget to be making changes on the basis of interpretations, simplifications and tax rates simplifications with basic exemptions.
Okay, so I'm going to state the common sense truism. The government of India or the government of any country has no money. Okay, it's all our money, right? It's the people's money. Now the job of government is to take the people's money and invest it for two causes: common interest, which is your roads, highways, planes, airports, everything else, and the other is to ensure social balance. And that's important, because if you do not ensure social balance, then you don't have evolution, then you have revolution. You have disruption in the system that benefits no one. And that's something that you should take as seriously, even though we have frustrations. But in just an honest sense, and let me touch upon this before I get your expert opinion, okay? Since the vast majority of us are individuals who have to pay some tax or the other. Mr. Garg, let me get you in. Just as an individual, okay, as a person with a family and an income and expenditures and stuff to buy and bills to pay, okay, is it a little bit frustrating that a small percentage of the people pay all the taxes when you and I both some of the really filthy rich people, they are offshore somewhere in Dubai and aren't paying taxes here? Rohit ji.
I think,
yes.
Yeah, I think there is no gainsaying what you are saying is correct to that extent. You, me, and everyone out here would be feeling, left out in that sense, that some people are paying taxes for that matter. And picking up from the data that you just shared, that 8 crores and odd has been paying as against the population that we have. And the idea, obviously is that the tax administration should try and bring more people into the tax debt. And that is the reason why, the basic exemption limit rise and the threshold for all other stuffs, interest, expenditure and all that should be raised. Because once we will expand our tax net and bring more and more new taxpayers into the tax bracket, there will be two things that will happen. First, we will be having more taxpayers on record, because as of now, people who are not paying taxes are not into the tax bracket. The money that is being spent, that money that is being earned is not getting counted into the statistics. The second thing would be, maybe over the years when this new direct tax code would be there, would be into the level playing field for the years to come. Maybe with the time that this basic exemption limit would, the income that will be earned by those taxpayers will come into the tax bracket, and more tax would be paid, and thereby, we will be increasing our tax collections also.
Okay, well, fingers crossed. Now, the frustration is if government is doing a great job with the monies, okay, fair enough. But how often do we then come out, all right, and then there's a power failure, and then you say, no, now it's half private, half public, oh my gosh. Then you say the road has potholes, so you pay your, so there is a frustration. Now the frustration is fine as long as it's an irritation. Everybody wants more money in their own pockets. We're all selfish, that's how capitalist systems work. Fair enough. We need to understand the social welfare of this in a very pragmatist sense, okay? So that's also fair enough. But this irritation, it's an itch that has not been scratched. So let me get General Kumar into this conversation. General Kumar, before I get into the heavy text of expenditure and what our defense budget and etc. is going to be, as a person, I'm sure you get an army pension, okay? Do you have to pay taxes, sir, out of that every year?
Absolutely. You see, the taxation for every citizen of the country, irrespective of profession, caste, creed, religion, what have you. So we do pay our share of taxes on our pension that we have. And obviously, the taxes are not on pension per se. It's on the individual's income.
Yes.
So the people may be having, some kind of additional income by way of, property, land, etc., etc. So, to that extent, the rules are familiar. The rules are universal. And then, the middle class to which we belong, the payment is done straight away by the paying authority.
So there might be some rental income, there might be some interest incomes, maybe some stock market investment, but that's pretty much it, right? That's the sources of income. But is it then when we see the guy who's the first time he makes 2 crores is then he picks up a golden visa to Dubai? Why do people go to get a golden visa in Dubai by buying property there? Is to dodge income tax, okay? Let's be clear, you don't pay taxes. So is that frustrating, or should we say if you can't beat them, join him? As soon as you get guys 2-3 crores, go get a golden visa, shift there and try to avoid taxes in India. Isn't that frustrating, General Saab?
Yeah, frustration can lead us nowhere. The point of issue is, yes, on the face of it looks, the headlines, and the news lines, and the bylines, and the Twitter world, we all talk about it. How does it make a difference? It's not in my canvas. So those who can, they will do it. But 99.9% have no option. So, you might as well lay back, enjoy what you have, and look towards contribution. To actually, frankly speaking, if we look at a developed India in a distant future or a near future, or shall we say 2047, how do we go about it? We have to pay taxes. The tax rationalization has taken place. We look back over
okay, as the infamous saying, death and taxes. Okay, so we have to pay taxes. We always have had to pay taxes. We always will have to pay taxes. But it's about the fairness of a system, right? And the system right now, and I'm saying it in your face, it's got nothing to do with this government, previous government, or honestly even next government, okay? The system at this point of time is telling you that if you're very, very rich, you're pretty sorted in terms of the proportional tax you'll pay, because you found a mechanism to dodge it. Even your house is not in your own name. In fact, when very rich people buy property, they don't transfer from one person to the other. They form a company, the property is in the name of the company, and you buy the company, you don't buy the property, okay? That's how these guys do it, right? I'm not even talking about offshoring. Then there is a set of people, very rich, own thousands of bighas, drive a Mercedes, but they say agricultural income, no tax, okay? We can't grudge the people at the bottom of the pyramid, okay, who are earning 4 or 5 lakhs, okay, who's, who might be an auto rickshaw driver, okay, for not paying taxes. So it's at the top, that's the frustration happens. All right, so let me get Satya Kumar into this conversation before I get Mr. Kurma into this. Satya Kumar ji, like I said, people watching the broadcast want to know 2 things. GST is not part of the budget. Everything else is devil in the details. So it's about taxes, and it's probably about how the market is going to respond. So I'm going to ask you the first question first. Taxes, other than incremental change, any miracles expected?
Yeah, Rishabh, the present budget comes in the tough times, whether we agree or not. The economic fundamentals like GDP, fiscal deficit, numbers can be proclaimed and propagated. But we should see the fact of a common man. Today, the GST is charged on an inflation, the price rise. There are 2 price rise. One is asset price inflation, as well as there is a food price inflation. When there is an inflation, definitely people will expect to provide tax benefits, especially to the middle class. Especially the middle class will expect tax benefits as an announcement. So this tax benefits to whom does this tax benefit to be targeted? The honest taxpayers in this country at any point of time is the salaried employee. Because once he gets a salary, section 192 of the Income Tax Act, the TDS is deducted, first share goes to the government, next comes to his home. So he has to be incentivized, he has to be provided the benefit. So this budget has to target at least 15 lakhs as the tax benefit to, and the people who are in the 15 lakhs income has to be incentivized heavily. They may take up deduction, they may provide deduction, they may provide rebate, or whatever may be the form. But they should ensure at up to 15 lakhs people are provided tax benefit over
no, but that's the point. No, so you're saying Satya Kumar ji, exactly what I said, incremental change. No, you'll take it from X to Y, Y to Z. I am saying an overall issue. And I'll give people watching the broadcast an example. Okay, a big corporate is operating in this country. I'm not going to name it. All right, it's brought in investment, and they've set up a large multi-100 crore project. The multi-100 crore project has wound up. Okay, it's shut down, and they've sold assets at peanuts, and they've run 3, 4, 5, 600 crore loss. A person like me, who's a salaried person, is going, oh my God, 600 crore loss. Whoa! But the actual founder is not worried at all, because he is going to write off the loss and index it from next year onwards, and not pay any taxes for the next few years. So they're not stressed out about the loss. And if you showed me a minus 600 crore figure, I would have a heart attack. These people are saying, okay, we index it against the taxes and we are okay. So Satya Kumar, there is a frustration on that point, because as you said, first check from our salaries goes to government.
So definitely the corporates have their own ways of managing. In fact, loss carry forward scenario is there. They can do a merger and acquisition of the loss making entity. There are tax planning strategy available to corporates, because corporates can move their capital abroad. They can use tax havens. They can use tax arbitrage as a model, and the round tripping can be used as a model. And even Dubai, whatever you are mentioning as Dubai as an entity, they can use all these methodologies to reduce tax. Coming to the point where we have IBC court, when they take loan from a bank and they're not able to pay, IBC comes as a savior, and they are able to transfer their business safely to some other businessman, and there is a haircut of the loan. All these facilities are available to a corporate. I'm talking about common man, middle class, who is suffering, whose expenditure and consumption has reduced in the past 1 year by 60%. 60% the consumption has got reduced in the middle class, and the poor people are not able to sustain because of the price rise, and the GST is levied on fortified kernel rice. I am from South. Fortified kernel rice are distributed through public distribution system, and on that GST is levied. On popcorn, GST is levied. Menu-based taxation has come. We subscribed only for one nation, one market, one tax. We accepted multiple tax rates and GST, but we cannot accept menu-based taxation.
Okay, no, but okay. For people watching the broadcast, the menu-based taxation always existed.
That cannot be accepted.
You know, in this country, if you sat in a restaurant with an AC, you paid a different tax rate. If you sat in a restaurant without an AC, you paid a different tax rate. I don't know if you had a pankha, was it a different tax rate? If it was a cooler, different tax rate, I don't know.
Menu-based taxation. Dosa with podi, 18%. Dosa with masala, 12%. Popcorn with caramel, 18%. What is this rate?
Okay. Okay, I promise you, it's not unique. It's not unique. If you go to Dubai and you buy popcorn with caramel, you will pay a higher tax. All right. I know this is a meme conversation which has been going on for the past 3 weeks. So it's true in other parts also. But the reason it is frustrating, because government has to find a way to find the money. Okay. You have to take from Peter and then pay Paul, right? That's exactly how it's going to happen. Government has no money. Okay. It's all the people's money. Everything. So it has to find the money. The best finance minister can do is what is called revenue neutral. that if we got 10,000 crores last year from direct taxes, this year if we had kept the regime up, it would have gone up to 11,000 crores. So I'm losing that 1,000 crores extra income, so I'm doing something revenue neutral, which means something goes down, something somewhere else goes up. Now this is all great if the country is doing well. Now let me just take a sectoral intervention to take on the larger picture. Vishal Kurma is joining us. Mr. Kurma, you're running a university out of Hyderabad, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So how many people do you employ, sir, who are teaching and staff members and other ancillary people?
We have total of about close to 1,100 plus people.
So 1,100 people who are then salaried people, right? I mean, it's a venture, but then all of these people, if the tax rate today goes down without any cost to you, those people will have more money in their bank account. So you benefit because they'll be happier, they'll be slightly wealthier, they'll benefit. So are you hopeful that something special happens?
See, Rishabh, thank you so much for setting the context all this while. A couple of things. One, of course, the consumption is very, very sluggish at the moment, and that is basically plaguing the entire economy as we speak. And now towards that, a couple of factors have basically come up, and which also impacts the job creation, which results towards the economy's disposable income, per capita disposable income for them. Now, if you have to get those things sorted, there are a couple of things which are required. One is, of course, the capex from the government side has to pick up for sure, and the deployment has not been done, particularly for this year. And maybe it is because of the last July budget post the elections, and then they didn't get time or whatever, and the consumption was not there for the capital expenditure which they had allocated. Now there's a 12% dip which is there, which obviously would have impacted the consumption story there. Second is you definitely need the job creation, which will also get impacted if the capital expenditure takes up and it moves towards the north side. So that is going to work. For job creation, which also is going to impact the consumption, is you need desperately, I would say, you need the urbanization of the next 50 towns to come up to the level of the 6 metros which are there in this country. And if that happens, that can only happen once you have the setting up of SEZs in those particular cities, and also some of the GCCs coming and setting up in those particular cities.
Okay, so let me ask a follow-up, Mr. Kurma, on that, because it seems we are not in a crisis, right? There's no disaster happening right now, both in India or, seriously in any parts of the world. I know growth is a bit sluggish, but, we've come out of COVID. There's no economic crisis. There's no, financial markets meltdown. So everything looks good. So what Mr. Kurma is referring to is that when you say I'm going to spend 30,000 crores on building infrastructure, but by the end of the year, you don't have enough projects to have consumed the 30,000 crores, you haven't deployed the funds, and therefore it's of no real use to the economy. But the issue is, when we see the roads are getting built, the metro stations are getting built, the trains are coming online, we are seeing the airports getting built. It seems that what you're saying is happening. All of this is happening. But at the same time, the GDP growth just won't go beyond 7%. What's happened?
See, Rishabh, one thing I would like to tell you is direct taxes or STT or even the capital gains, the target for this year, government has already met. There is an increase in the bracket by about 7.5% number of taxpayers. Now, even if there is a collection which is higher, which is almost 17-18% growth over the previous year in terms of direct taxes, what I'm talking about, and you have met the target, don't you think if the consumption is bad, now the time is there to cut the taxes for the middle class? Because if you are sitting on that kind of a chunk of funds and you have achieved your targets, it clearly means the consumption needs.
Yeah, but my question is, why is it bad? Country seems to be looking okay. I mean, my dipstick test always is go to the markets. Are they quiet or are they buzzing? They seem to be buzzing. Everything looks good. But when the GDP figures hit us, they just don't cross 7%. Why is consumption bad? What is happening? What is the miasma?
The consumption is going wrong because of the kind of inflations which are there, the job creation which is not happening as per the expectation. Those two are the big factors which are there. And unless we address those things in a systemic way in the economy, those are not going to change. You saw the taxes, direct taxes, almost growing at about 18% odd in this year. But why the economy is still growing at 6.2%? Can anybody tell me that? There is a clear reason which is there. Because if your tax net has increased by 7.5%, your collections are up by almost 18%, the economy shouldn't be at this kind of a level of 6.2%, and you're giving a forecast of 6.4%.
So there is an X
How
factor.
it is going to align towards Viksit Bharat 2047, where you need minimum 8%, 8.5%.
Okay, that's what the economic survey said yesterday. You need minimum 2 decades of 8% growth, which means that you got to have 0 year. All right, that this is the first year when we surpassed 8% growth. Some people would say, no, you need to do 10% growth. All right. But let's say 8% growth. China was exceeding 10, 12, 14% growth at its peak of growth, not anymore, but they did that for 2.5 decades, okay, to get where they are. So we'll have to do the same. We got 22 years till 2047. So which becomes 0 year? Let me put that question to Gautam Mukherjee. Gautam Mukherjee, it seems rather odd, but the statistics are telling us this, that even though we are seeing the highways being built and we are seeing the airports being built, and the forex reserve numbers look okay, the FDI numbers look great, the startup numbers look fine, the unicorn numbers seem to look great, even the trade numbers are not looking bad. Everything, GST numbers, every month seems to be a record. But when it comes to the core economic growth measured in GDP, we just can't seem to get north of 7%.
Well, the main reason for that is investment. If you do not put money into investment, that is into infrastructure, into developing industry, into developing other ancillaries that will promote, greater production, inclusive, of course, of employment, then you cannot grow. Now, one of our obsessions, and I would say it's a good obsession if you look at it from, the point of view of not going belly up, is control of inflation and control of the deficit. Now, these two things obsess the planners, and they have done a good job on it, and people praise us for it. But it also restricts us to under 7% growth. And, we console ourselves by saying it's the greatest in the world. But look at the $4 trillion base. So you're growing at under 7% on a $4 trillion base. You should be at 10 and 15 trillion. How are you going to get there? There is no other way. Jitna chini utna meetha. There's no other way.
Okay, but it seems, like I said, it seems to be happening, but I was in the morning, okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you decide to make yourself a cup of tea and you put a patila and put water in it and you turn it on, it'll start heating up. So there's an incremental change in temperature. But then comes a point at 100 degrees Celsius where there's a change of state, where it changes from liquid into gas, and then the change happens very, very fast. So we are hunting right now as a country for that point, that incremental change turning into an orbital change. Now, it can happen. Other countries have done it. We seem to have the puzzle pieces in play, but we haven't hit it. Now, then that's the next big difficult question, and it's not an easy one to answer. I'm going to just touch upon this thought with Mr. Kurma and Mr. Rawal first. Mr. Rawal, so one was taxes, the other is the markets. Now, the markets are in a corrective phase, which is fine. They've been at record highs every month last year. So, a little bit of correction, 10% here and there is fine. Are we in trouble in the market? So, the Sensex is up 900 points today. How do you expect the markets to react?
I don't feel market is in trouble. There is no issue at all. So, it's a normal phenomena. Everything doesn't go up as you are saying, it's boiling and boiling and boiling. But every time you have to sometimes switch off the gas also. Otherwise, it will blast. So, now the thing is, the market was at that stage whenever it was going completely on the rising way only. Now the time it was there, this correction was very much due. And today, if you really see, it's again, I think approximately 1,000 points up. So, I think something must have been happening in the budget. That's the reason the market is reacting to that. And I don't feel that way. The other thing you said, that when that point will come, when we'll be going to the upward, the basic thing is actually the interest burden on this country is very, very high. So, as Gautam was saying that investment is the point, I will say that your own debt has to be reduced. The government has to reduce its own expenditure. The cost, the administrative costs and all, they are very high. They have to reduce. Every year we talk about that to reduce it, and we are doing it. But I think we are not achieving that targets also. That is also very important as compared to the GDP numbers, because you have to reduce your expenditure. Only then you will be having some money to pay the debts, and as and when you are in a comfortable in debts, you can make your investments, you can put your money in infrastructure as a cheaper money. Right now it's a very costlier money we are imposing, we are putting in, which is
the cost of money. Let me put that into perspective. If the most stable collateral you can ever offer a bank is generally considered to be real estate. It's an immovable property. Okay, so if you are lucky and you have a great banker and a good track record, if you buy a house, you will pay 8% interest on any loan you take on the house. Most corporates should be borrowing at north of 10%, 12%. Other loans will cost you 12%, 14%. Okay. Now, if you're in the United States of America, if you buy a house, you're paying maybe 2% interest on a house loan. Okay. Now, yes, that doesn't mean property bubbles don't happen in America and cause crises. We've been there, done that. So let me get a perspective here. Let me get Rohit back here. Rohit, we have been in this high interest economy forever. This is what we know. If you put money in a bank, you get a higher rate of interest. Therefore, for somebody who wants to borrow money from a bank, they pay even higher rate of interest. Can we fundamentally change this? Is it even possible?
Answer to that, again, we need to understand why this is so. As you rightly mentioned, if we look at the American and the European country where the cost of borrowing is very less, we need to find out the ways why this interest rates is at 9% as of now for the housing loan kind of thing. And correspondingly, the FD rates are pegged at around 7.5%. The point is that the money that is coming into the system by way of taxes or other way, until and unless the government wants to put this money back into the system by way of capex expenditure or making the consumption at a very high, this interest rates are not going to come down. We have seen in the past when the FD rates were around 6%, when the home loan interest was at 7% kind of thing, the rates were at a reduced rate. And the reason was that there was an increased consumption at that point of time. Until and unless, as Mr. Kurma has mentioned, until and unless we increase the consumption, there is no gainsaying that interest rates are not going to come down.
Okay, everybody is saying consumption. That's the problem. That's what's holding you back. That's what's taking you below that 7% consistently. We've had an interruption of COVID, but now that's done and dusted. We're 3 years later. So we have to have the base. We have to have year zero. That this is the year we hit 8% growth. Mr. Kurma, just stay with me 1 second. I want to get the General in who's been listening very patiently to our conversation. Now, General Kumar, let's spend a few minutes discussing another side of the puzzle. For people watching the broadcast, we are talking roughly about 6 lakh crores, maybe a little bit more, is going to be a defense allocation, right? Of which about 4 lakh crores is just doing the basics, paying salaries, paying pensions. You have about between 1.7 and 2 lakh crores, which is stuff you can buy. So when we say defense budget, we just don't mean buying tanks and planes. Most of that is paying bills. You have to feed the army or do other things, okay? So now in terms of stuff you can buy, you have two conundrums. One is that still the majority of it comes from abroad. Second is, even though we are producing about 20,000 crores worth of goods and exporting them from India now, those are generally not the state-of-the-art high-tech goods, not including BrahMos and a few other things. So let me get the General Kumar in. General Kumar, if we eliminate, number one, eliminate import of defense equipment, forget that. If we start exporting defense equipment, a single plane, state-of-the-art plane, one plane, $200 million it can earn you. Where are we in that journey that we, instead of being a net consumer of defense, we become a net earner from defense?
Rishabh, as of now, it's a pipe dream. Our entire edifice of military might, whatever it is today, And by the way, it's huge. We are the fourth largest military machine globally. But the other aspect is, as CIPRI tells us for over a decade now, that we have been the largest importer of arms ammunition system. Now from suddenly a largest importer, or shall I say one of the largest importer if we take last couple of years data into consideration, to an exporter is a huge difference. Making an aircraft or a tank or a ship or a missile system takes decades. It's a long gestation period, both in terms of finances as in terms of time. When we hear of the Boeings and the Fiat and the others, bigs in France or Europe or America, their genesis was the Second World War. So those behemoths are behemoths today because they've been in this business for a long period of time. Second aspect, if there is no war, they are part of dual use technology. So if they make a machine, the engine is used for cars, buses, and what have you. So we're able to sustain them. So that is the kind of a background it is. Now, of course, we have made a humble beginning. The first thing we have done is to change our dependency. We were 80% dependent or 85% dependent on the Russian system, be the tanks, be the ships, be the aircraft. What have you, the mixed variety or your tanks or T varieties, and the ships, frigates, and what have you. Everything was Russian order. Over last about a decade or so, we have consistently taken a decision to shift our dependence or make our dependence more broad-based. So we've gone to France and USA and Israelis who bailed us out another number of times. So
Okay.
that is one. And secondly, the Atmanirbhar Bharat, which we started. So we made a beginning. Imagine exporting 200 crore worth of ancillaries to over 36,000 crores in the previous year. So that's a huge step. Maybe these are the lower technology ones, but that's what we can do. So the focus of the government, the focus of the people is come onto this little area of
Okay,
the
so let me flip
Atmanirbhar
around.
Bharat.
Let me flip around the question. Do we have, okay, and I know it's a complex question because there's no easy answer, and I don't want to do any bashing of anything here. But do we have in the high tech products, in the LCA or in the Arjun or in the missile systems, BrahMos is an example which you are selling to the Philippines. Do we have at least some systems at the higher end of the ticket which parties abroad might be willing to pay a big buck for?
Yes, we have a fairly good track record in three areas where we have worked independently for a few decades now. Space is one of them, and space has a connotation with regards to security strategic concern. Second was the atomic energy. That itself is a homegrown program, and that's a big deterrent as far as security is concerned. And third is the integrated missile defense system that we have upon, with the Agni variants or the Akash variants and whatever. Now these have been good. We've spent about large amount of resources through about last 35 to 40 years to have achieved this little stage. So that is the kind of a thing we have. Now the ball game is how much of it is commercial or which you can probably export it and get revenues out of it.
Okay.
That's a
Okay, all right. So, last quick question, then I want to wrap up with the others before I take a break. So General, when we talk about America, for decades we talk about the American military industrial complex. Okay. In reality, India is just beginning to create a military industrial complex because all the others have been, from Mazagon Docks to HAL are all public entities. Now we are getting L&T and Adani and Mahindra and all these people starting up and trying to make howitzers and and other things. Are we heading in the direction that yes, in our lifetimes, before the decade is out, we will see a industrial complex that is going to be worth hundreds of billions of dollars?
Yes, I think our labor in this direction is tending to bear fruit. Whether it's the Tatas who are into a large amount of hardware, or Baba Kalyani, which is making guns, or the L&T. Yes, the guns are being ordered for by the Indian Army itself. So A is manufacturing, and B is manufacturing those products which are acceptable by their user. I'm sure if we are on the big threshold for these is concerned. These are not very, very high tech, but they are certainly reasonably high technology. Imagine the name. Every Indian knows about Bofors, the artillery gun, which created sensation then. Now we are in a position to manufacture our own artillery guns, and I'm sure we'll be able to export it and get some revenue as well and add on value. So these 3-4 companies today, the indigenous homegrown country, it lasts about 2.5 decades to 3, shall I put it, have done tremendous amount of work. L&T, the Tata.
There's so much I want to talk to you about but I want to ask you the question, artificial intelligence, drone swarms, okay, zero contact warfare, lessons from Ukraine. I mean, these are upcoming things. We've just seen, robo dogs marching on Rajpath. Is this just hoopla, or is it very, very real and it's coming and we really need to get on board with this?
See, technology is the driver for human beings. And majority of the technology and research and development has come through warfare or during war. Today, which we see the internet, it is a result of US defense project, which became so very successful. So when you're talking of these technology which have come in and being exploited and used by grandmoms in Ukraine to fire at the Russian tanks. See, imagine the plight in the Ukraine-Russia war 3 years back or 2 years, 9 months back. The might of the Russian Empire thought they could probably go in and capture Kyiv in 4.5 to 5 days, like the Second World War blitzkrieg of the Germans, which capitulated France in no time.
Yes.
So there it was. So these technologies are no longer.
But that's exactly why I've asked you this question, because we've all seen the footage of how you take a cheap, probably Chinese drone, okay, and you sellotape a grenade at the bottom of it and use it as a kamikaze strike on a troop carrier, okay, and be successful. And that's modern guerrilla warfare. It is going to be, and yes, the combat, what do I call them? The four-legged, whatever we've seen on Rajpath, I'll leave it at that. Okay, so some of them will be used for surveillance, but some of them are going to have advanced weapon systems. The Americans have been flying UAVs in Afghanistan from Nevada for the past 15 years. So those reality checks are here with us. Okay, hold that thought. We're at about an hour away. You're seeing all the cavalcades, but the bottom line is that yes, people have started arriving in Parliament, and we're going to see a marathon speech coming up in an hour. Before I take a short break, the last one before we see the speech, quick perspectives from everyone, starting with Gautam Mukherjee. Gautam Mukherjee, your expectations?
Well, I think it's going to be a investment intensive budget. There is no way out. I mean, relative to spec, people talk of 11 lakh crores in infrastructure development, more for the railways and other areas, that some of the new areas will also be introduced. I do think there is going to be a SOP for the bottom of the pyramid for the middle class, and there will be a lot of SOPs for farmers, poor people, etc., because this is the first budget of
the new government. That's correct. Okay, Mr. Kurma, same thoughts. Now we've discussed everything. Your expectation. What do you think is actually going to happen?
On the expectations front, I think the middle class, which is in the range of salary bracket 10 to 20 lakhs, is the one where the consumption is getting sluggish. So those slabs, particularly towards addressing those brackets, is something which is the first thing which the government should be looking at, apart from the investment in the capex which has to come up. Second thing, I think some kind of a PLI should be there for the companies, for the corporates, because in 2019, when they cut the corporate tax, the idea was that the private participation in the capex also on the infrastructure front will increase, which has not increased that much, and that has got pocketed for whatever reasons. So PLI should be there. And the last bit for my higher education piece, which I want to put forward for the finance minister, would be that the CSR portion or percentage should be allocated by these companies for the universities to set up the research centers, incubation centers, and drive the innovation through these universities.
But why do the universities have to be forced to do this? Because I promise you, I was having this conversation in the previous session, right before you joined, that why, if somebody understands that AI is the future, we don't want to ask people like you to set up a kamra with a pankha. We need to give you 1,000 NVIDIA 5090 GPUs to process the LLM models, and that's the people who will. That's the people you will hire 1 year later. So right now, everyone, including me, in my profession, have to hire people who know nothing. I have people who come and give interviews, who ask them a question, what is India's GDP, and they do not know. And they voluntarily want to be journalists covering the budget. Okay. So then we accepted that, okay, I'm going to hire them and for 6 months I'm going to train them, right? So why aren't these people doing it? Thinking like this?
I think there is a strong focus which is there on the other social impact initiatives also, which I think are there. So it is a matter of balancing is what I would say, and how to balance the allocation of the CSR funds. So somewhere it is very, very lopsided in my point of view, and it is definitely not going in the right direction.
My point was, it is in corporate interest to invest in education, okay?
It is very much
and by education, I do not mean put a pankha and in a room, all right, and give them a computer. Education means you need the lab, you need the CNC machine, you need the supercomputer where all of this is going to take place. That's what's required. Rohit, quick thoughts, your expectations before I take a break.
Yeah, I believe there would be some impetus for the manufacturing sector so that more jobs are created. As far as the personal income tax portion is concerned, obviously, I think there would be some tax swaps for the middle class. The basic demand of raising the tax exemption limit should be met. Then the HRA exemption, which is there in the old scheme, should be extended into the new scheme as well. Then the standard deduction, which is there at 75,000, should be increased. Something like that, filing of tax return. The important thing is that the government should consider allowing the joint filing of return for the family kind of thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
the second person they mentioned that, a concept of used to be HUF, okay, it's not wiped out completely, but joint filing. Last thoughts, Mr. Rawal, on your expectations.
I agree with you, sir. Now it is high time to bring the family. It is not a HUF, Rishabh. We are talking about wife, husband, married filing jointly.
Yes.
HUF was a different concept. It has its own pros and cons. That's the reason it is not being so popular now. But on the other side, married filing jointly is a concept which Europeans and US is already following up. And that really emotionally also keeps the family bonded, as well as gives more money in the hands of the family to give more consumption driven market.
Okay, explain this to me. Okay, let's say I'm earning 20 lakh rupees and my wife is earning 20 lakh rupees. Okay, why would it make sense for us to join the income? Won't that increase our tax bracket?
No, this doesn't increase the tax bracket. They have to rationalize that way that the tax brackets are not increased.
So what's the benefit for me to file joint in theory?
Yes, the benefits are there. In your case, your wife is making 20 lakhs, you are making 20 lakhs, so example is different. If I take your wife is earning only 5 lakhs and you are earning 20 lakhs rupees and tax slab is 30 lakhs rupees for all, the higher tax. So you get the benefit of that. You don't reach to that slab jointly and get the benefit.
Jointly we don't reach, because then that income on an average becomes 25 lakhs. So divided by 2 is actually 12.5 lakhs. Okay, that's the logic. I need to take a break. We'll see you in a few minutes. And then we are non-stop until we get to hear the speech, and then of course spend the next few hours analyzing it, however interesting that's going to be. The budgetary exercise, ladies and gentlemen, is not what it was 20 years ago. This is not the be all and end all, because as Mr. Kurma and others have been pointing us, you can announce, but it's in the execution as far as government is concerned. And for the rest of us, we are just hoping government gets out of the way, because government can't deliver 10% growth. India is going to have to deliver 10% growth. That's all of us. A lot of good things are happening. A lot of excitement is happening. A lot of curiosity is there. We do the countdown on the other side. See you in a minute.
ਪਿਛਲੀ ਵਾਰ 8 ਘੰਟੇ ਵਾਲੀ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਚੋਂ ਕੋਈ ਕੱਟ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੱਗਿਆ। ਕੱਟ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਤਾਂ ਛੱਡੋ, ਬੱਲਬ ਨੇ ਝਮੱਕਾ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਾਰਨਾ, ਝਮੱਕਾ।
ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਵੀ ਬਿੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਂਦਾ। ਅਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਇਹ ਉਪਰਾਲਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ।
ਜੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਸੀਐਮ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਜੀ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਹਰੇਕ ਵਰਗ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਸਾਰੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵਾਅਦੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਪੂਰੇ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਸਾਡਾ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਦਾ ਬਿੱਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਏ ਉਹ ਜ਼ੀਰੋ ਆਇਆ ਏ।
ਮੈਂ ਇੱਕ ਦਿਹਾੜੀਦਾਰ ਬੰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਿੱਲ ਭਰਨਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਔਖਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਿੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਭਰਨਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਇਸ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਤੇ ਮਾਣ ਹੈ।
ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ 600 ਯੂਨਿਟ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਫੈਸਲਾ ਲਿਆ ਸੀ। 90% ਘਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਹਦਾ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੋਇਆ। ਅਸੀਂ ਭ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਟਾਚਾਰ ਰੋਕਿਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਰੈਵਨਿਊ ਦੇ ਹੋਰ ਸਾਧਨ ਵਧਾਏ ਨੇ, ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਮਿਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇੰਡਸਟਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ।
ਮੇਰਾ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਦਾ ਬਿੱਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ 1 ਸਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਆਵਾ ਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਵੀ 1 ਸਾਲ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਵੀ ਆਂਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ, ਜਦ ਆਹ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਦੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਬਣੀ ਆ ਜੀ।
ਮੁੰਡਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਛੋਟਾ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਪਿਛਲੀ ਵਾਰੀ ਬਿੱਲ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਆਇਆ था? माँ 3500 रुपया। कहना ऐसी जीरो आया। माँ पे ऐसा मुख्यमंत्री पूरे इंडिया में बनना चाहिए।
MDH का किचन किंग किचन में हो तो हम सब कुछ बना सकते हैं। बैंगन का भरता, आलू गोभी, भिंडी मसाला और भी बहुत कुछ।
MDH।
उत्तर प्रदेश की धरती वीरों से भरी है। सरहद पर देश की सीमा की सुरक्षा करते हुए जान न्यौछावर करने वाले यूपी के बहादुरों का लंबा इतिहास है। उत्तर प्रदेश की योगी सरकार बॉर्डर पर शहीद होने वाले प्रदेश के वीर सपूतों के परिवारों की सुध ले रही है।
अपने प्राणों की आहुति देने वाले सैनिकों के परिजनों को 50 लाख रुपए की अनुग्रह राशि।
2018 में मुख्यमंत्री योगी ने जारी किया शासनादेश। शौर्यपूर्ण पराक्रम दिखाते हुए सर्वोच्च बलिदान करने वालों के परिवार को मदद, शहीद सैनिकों के आश्रितों को सरकारी नौकरी, शहीद के छोटे बच्चों की पढ़ाई लिखाई का खर्च उठाएगी सरकार। सेना अर्धसैनिक बलों के शहीद के आश्रितों को आर्थिक मदद दोगुना। शहीद की पत्नी आश्रितों को अब 50 लाख रुपए आर्थिक मदद, पत्नी और बच्चों को 35 लाख रुपए, माता पिता को 15 लाख रुपए। उत्तर प्रदेश के अर्धसैन्य बलों और सेना के शहीदों के लिए योगी सरकार के फैसलों से न सिर्फ अधिकारियों और कर्मचारियों का मनोबल बढ़ा है, बल्कि शहीदों के आश्रितों को संबल भी प्राप्त हो रहा है।
खाने में कोई स्वाद नहीं है।
अरे किफायती लाल सस्ते वाले दाल मसाले स्वाद हुआ बेकार। इधर कीमती लाल को देखो खाना बना कमाल। MDH की हल्दी मिर्ची धनिया करे कमाल। रंग दे, ये खुशबू दे, ये तीखा, ये कम पड़े। क्या निराला MDH मसाला।
ਪਿਛਲੀ ਵਾਰ 8 ਘੰਟੇ ਵਾਲੀ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਚੋਂ ਕੋਈ ਕੱਟ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੱਗਿਆ। ਕੱਟ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਤਾਂ ਛੱਡੋ, ਬੱਲਬ ਨੇ ਝਮੱਕਾ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਾਰਨਾ, ਝਮੱਕਾ।
ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਵੀ ਬਿੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਂਦਾ। ਅਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਇਹ ਉਪਰਾਲਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ।
ਜੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਸੀਐਮ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਜੀ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਹਰੇਕ ਵਰਗ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਸਾਰੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵਾਅਦੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਪੂਰੇ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਸਾਡਾ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਦਾ ਬਿੱਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਏ ਉਹ ਜ਼ੀਰੋ ਆਇਆ ਏ।
ਮੈਂ ਇੱਕ ਦਿਹਾੜੀਦਾਰ ਬੰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਿੱਲ ਭਰਨਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਔਖਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਿੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਭਰਨਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਇਸ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਤੇ ਮਾਣ ਹੈ।
ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ 600 ਯੂਨਿਟ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਫੈਸਲਾ ਲਿਆ ਸੀ। 90% ਘਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਹਦਾ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੋਇਆ। ਅਸੀਂ ਭ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਟਾਚਾਰ ਰੋਕਿਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਰੈਵਨਿਊ ਦੇ ਹੋਰ ਸਾਧਨ ਵਧਾਏ ਨੇ, ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਮਿਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇੰਡਸਟਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ।
ਮੇਰਾ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਦਾ ਬਿੱਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ 1 ਸਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਆਵਾ ਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਵੀ 1 ਸਾਲ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਵੀ ਆਂਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ, ਜਦ ਆਹ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਦੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਬਣੀ ਆ ਜੀ।
ਮੁੰਡਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਛੋਟਾ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਪਿਛਲੀ ਵਾਰੀ ਬਿੱਲ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਆਇਆ था? माँ 3500 रुपया कहना ऐसी जीरो आया माँ फिर ऐसा मुख्यमंत्री पूरे इंडिया में बनना चाहिए।
MDH की देगी मिर्च,
देगी मिर्च का तड़का, अंग अंग फड़का।
MDH की देगी मिर्च।
ਪਿਛਲੀ ਵਾਰ 8 ਘੰਟੇ ਵਾਲੀ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਚੋਂ ਕੋਈ ਕੱਟ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੱਗਿਆ। ਕੱਟ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਤਾਂ ਛੱਡੋ, ਬੱਲਬ ਨੇ ਝਮੱਕਾ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਾਰਨਾ, ਝਮੱਕਾ।
ਸਾਨੂੰ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਵੀ ਬਿੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਆਂਦਾ। ਅਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਖੁਸ਼ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਲਈ ਇਹ ਉਪਰਾਲਾ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ।
ਜੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਸੀਐਮ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਜੀ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਹਰੇਕ ਵਰਗ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਸਾਰੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵਾਅਦੇ ਆ ਉਹ ਪੂਰੇ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਸਾਡਾ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਦਾ ਬਿੱਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਏ ਉਹ ਜ਼ੀਰੋ ਆਇਆ ਏ।
ਮੈਂ ਇੱਕ ਦਿਹਾੜੀਦਾਰ ਬੰਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਿੱਲ ਭਰਨਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਔਖਾ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਿੱਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਭਰਨਾ ਪੈਂਦਾ ਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਇਸ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਤੇ ਮਾਣ ਹੈ।
ਸਰਕਾਰ ਨੇ 600 ਯੂਨਿਟ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਫੈਸਲਾ ਲਿਆ ਸੀ। 90% ਘਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਹਦਾ ਫਾਇਦਾ ਹੋਇਆ। ਅਸੀਂ ਭ੍ਰਿਸ਼ਟਾਚਾਰ ਰੋਕਿਆ, ਅਸੀਂ ਰੈਵਨਿਊ ਦੇ ਹੋਰ ਸਾਧਨ ਵਧਾਏ ਨੇ, ਤਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਫ੍ਰੀ ਮਿਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇੰਡਸਟਰੀ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ।
ਮੇਰਾ ਬਿਜਲੀ ਦਾ ਬਿੱਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ 1 ਸਾਲ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਆਵਾ ਤਾਂ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਵੀ 1 ਸਾਲ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ ਵੀ ਆਂਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗਾ ਜਦ ਆਹ ਭਗਵੰਤ ਮਾਨ ਦੀ ਸਰਕਾਰ ਬਣੀ ਆ ਜੀ।
ਮੁੰਡਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਛੋਟਾ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਪਿਛਲੀ ਵਾਰੀ ਬਿੱਲ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਆਇਆ था माँ 3500 रुपया कहना ऐसी जीरो आया माँ फिर ऐसा मुख्यमंत्री पूरे इंडिया में बनना चाहिए।
Welcome back. We are now in this marathon build-up, and it's going to be non-stop. The finance minister actually starts delivering her speech in just under an hour from now. Ladies and gentlemen, mine will be the last generation that remembers when the union budget was the be-all and end-all. Because 25 years ago, 30 years ago, the government ran the economy. Now the government manages the economy. 25, 30 years ago, this speech and every businessman, every employee, every person in the country would be on tenterhooks because lives and fates and fortunes would be decided on what was done. Not so much anymore. A large part of what government earns, GST is anyway out of the budget, it's in a GST council somewhere else. And a broader understanding that the budget speech is telling you government priority areas, where the thrust of the theme is, what the conceptualization of what is urgent seems to be. Everything else in terms of policy happens here around. You hear the ministries announcing programs and plans all the time at every given opportunity, in fact. So the budgetary exercise that comes up with something we've never heard of before hasn't happened in a long time. So you will rather see an accounting exercise, a themology, hopefully some good news, even though the news on the GDP front could have been a little bit better yesterday. But overall, the country is doing well. We're heading in the right place. We would want to be doing better. Now, within that, for all of us, what remains other than the devil in the detail is, frankly, what happens to income taxes and what happens to the stock markets and how do they digest. Everything else is devil in the detail. So let me pick up this conversation and try my best to have it. Bindu Dalmia joining us on the broadcast, Jayajit Bhattacharya is with us, Wing Commander Sudhakaran with us, and Mitali joining us as well. Jayajit, let me start with you. Okay, so I want to start the macro picture with you because everything looks great. We are seeing the highways, we are seeing the train stations, we are seeing the iPhones, we are seeing, defense production happening. It seems to be going just fine. Inflation is under, everything seems to be fine. But our GDP figures just won't go past 7%. They're just stubborn. What's the problem?
The devil lies in the details. So as you rightly said, the economic survey is like the report card, and the report card kind of gives us an A grade in terms of how we are handling economy. But then why doesn't it feel good? And if you look at the details of how income is happening, the income of the middle class is happening. That is getting challenged because of multiple factors, including inflation. And so the discretionary power of the discretionary spend of the middle class is getting curtailed. Along with it, it was an election year, and as we all know, that the infrastructure spending by the government was also curtailed, which also hit the incomes of the middle class, because that's how the two are connected. Because of the government spend, the incomes finally petered down to the middle class, and one led to the other. So, in terms of structural issue, was there really a structural issue? Not really. It was more about how the infrastructure spend of the government took a backseat because of elections, and not really a backseat. There was a model code of conduct that came in, and therefore expenditure was curtailed for about a quarter and not much. And that reflected in the weakening of the demand. Also, for sure, there has been an inflation. There has been a significant food inflation, which you can't really control through monetary policies or fiscal policies. You have to control it through demand, through supply side economics. And with climate change and geopolitical disruption, that was a challenge.
But something's a problem, because Jayjeet, last year, okay, 2024, the highest ever bumper crop, okay, of wheat. So record production of wheat, record production of rice, record production of fruits and vegetables. So everything is on the record, right? So it is not like there was a drought last year and we got stuck because of some El Nino, some kind of issues which keep happening, because India is still monsoon dependent. So like I said, everything seems to be just fine. Every index tells you that we should be killing it, but the GDP index says we are not. Where have we gotten stuck?
Again, coming back to the point that government expenditure is 20% of the GDP. If you look at even the fiscal deficit numbers, they have improved, and that's not necessarily something to be celebrated, because that just means the government did not spend what was budgeted. Once that spending happens, our economy is still dependent on government spending, and the government has been judiciously spending, in the sense that it's not overspending. As it is, we have a significant portion of our revenue expenditure actually going into interest payments. So we wouldn't like to borrow too much, but there is a fine balance to be done.
Yeah.
And so coming back to your question, what's really ailing us? If everything looks good, what's ailing us is not really much. It is basically a temporary blip, is the way I would see it. Let's wait for the Q4 results in the next couple of months.
Okay, guys, because there are bottom lines. The bottom lines are very clear. The economic survey made it clear as well, and we all know it, right? We've got 22 years now. That's the deadline, self-imposed, self-volunteered deadline. 2047, developed economy, which means you'll have to grow at north of 8% every year from now till then. Okay. Some year will have to be 0 year, which means that's the first year you started growing at 8% to then hit a stride of 8% and more every year. Which is it going to be? Mithali, we just seem to be not getting past. Something happens, COVID happens, then COVID recovery. So other than the post-COVID correction, which of course you went into double-digit growth, but that of course is a cyclical thing. We've just not been able to, everything, I can see the highway. It's a great place to drive. I know the property prices on that highway have gone up. I know it's become expensive for me to go out and eat. So, I can see the markets are buzzing. I can see all sorts of fancy cars on the roads. It seems that the country is doing great, but the GDP figure says, yeah, we are okay, we can do better. Why?
So I think, Rishabh, that's because all of us have a partial view of the economy. So in the last 6 months or 8 months, thanks to my work, I've been traveling to not only the tier 1, but a lot of tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities. And that's where you start to see the inequalities and the cracks. Because it's important to be able to explain that while a lot of benefits of growth have come into, the larger cities, have come into the top consumption basket, and we have managed to create a lot of millionaires also. In fact, we've also managed to create dollar millionaires and dollar billionaires. But there is still a large portion of our economy which continues to be, say, even below poverty line, or, remaining below a certain minimum consumption threshold. And therefore, it becomes important to say, how do you reach that 8% mark? You reach that 8% mark when a larger and larger proportion of your population starts to get the benefits of growth, starts to engage in that kind of consumption.
But like I said, we are almost at saturation, never before in the history of India, and giving everybody a house. We are almost at saturation and never before in the history of India and giving everybody water at home. We are consuming as a country 20 GB of data per person per month. That's almost a GB a day. Think about it. Do 800 million. Okay, 800 million gigabytes of data are being consumed in India every single day. So it all looks like we've played all the cards. The country is doing well. We are the fastest growing economy in the world. We're going to overtake Germany as the fourth largest any time now, probably already have. So there's no disaster, but it's just not that, it's just stubborn, not beyond 7%. So something needs to be stuck. So it can't just be that. I can see that in the tier 2, 3-tier towns, the property rates are skyrocketing, the malls have come up, airports are being built, the highways are being connected. So what's going on?
So, I mean, Rishabh, you very rightly said, we are seeing some amount of development happening in the tier 2 or tier 3, but that development also needs to be sustainable. So, no one is denying that India is the fastest growing emerging economy in the world. It has been for the last 10 years. What we want to do is quicken that pace even further. And for that, we need two ingredients: sustainability and innovation. We need to see sustainability in the way we manufacture things. We are still using old processes. We need better labor productivity, capital productivity. And secondly, we need innovation. We need to be leading the world on a number of things, like artificial intelligence.
Okay, I'm going to hold that. Okay, just hold that thought, because I'm going to go to get Bindu Dalmia in. So Bindu Dalmia, I'm a millennial. Okay, I am that borderline millennial. Okay, so I grew up in the 1990s. In India. So I am the, again, last generation that remembers when country had no money, that even in the national capital, the schools had to be shut because you had no petrol for the buses. I remember, a government being formed every 6 months, general elections, because, we were in total mess. So Narendra Modi has given us, number one, stability in government for now 12 years.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Without a doubt.
Number two, I've just mentioned, we are achieving saturation on what we should have been expecting as basic things: the ability to go to the bathroom and the ability to drink some water. So we are achieving saturation. So we are building highways like never before, airports like never before, ports like never before, trains are being upgraded like never before. It seems to be happening, but the GDP figure says it's not happening fast enough. Why is that?
May I mildly differ with my co-panelists and little bit with you to the extent that I don't think, Rishabh ji, we have space for either complacency or being self-congratulatory, because the effects of growth and progress have yet to trickle down. We may have high GDP growths in the past, a median of about 7, but the growths did not adequately trickle down to the bottom of the pyramid, even though the Gini coefficient has shown that there has been a bridging of disparities. However, I think that global macros are going to definitely determine the contours of this budget. To deal with the unprecedented geo-economic shocks that are in the offing from both America and from China, policymakers have got to show a sense of urgency, a sense of flexibility, of being agile to responsive to changes coming in from disruptions coming in from the US and from China. I think this could well be the 1991 inflection moment for the Modi government, where they could aggressively push for the second generation economic reforms.
Okay. And okay, the question then is, what are those? Because you said it's not trickling down, but if you were in government, okay,
yes,
you're saying, okay, I'm giving 80 crore people free ration. I'm building their houses to near saturation. We're talking about crores, not thousands, crores of houses being built, crores of toilets being built, 12 crore people now with a gas connection, okay. How many crores now with insurance for the first time, be it health or life? What more trickle down can be done from government? I'm assuming everything else has to be an economic process that happens in the country.
It's a lovely question, Rishabh ji, and it would require one or two answers to this. It won't end with one. Firstly, I have never, if you look at today's economic times, I have never seen such screaming urgency from one wing of the government telling the other, get out of the way. no more business as usual, which is the government is recognizing that there is a need for speedy reforms. We need to fall back on what was a prescribed textbook success story during the COVID era. We fell back on infrastructure growth, Atmanirbharta, which is our own consumption, reviving our own domestic consumption. And most important is now to get the GSDP of the states going, because states is where the total factor productivity needs to increase in terms of easing of land, labor laws, being more, improving on the ease of doing business, the cost of doing business, the ease of paying taxes. I think we need radical changes. It's incremental.
Okay, so there is something that tells us that when it comes to frontline stuff happening, Gujarat is killing it. You'll say, okay, but that was Modi's state and BJP ruled state, but so is Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, okay, all electronics industry, R&D, space sector, all the cool stuff, iPhone manufacturing is happening in Tamil Nadu, okay. So something is going right there. A lot of other places is just not going right. UP has become from a basket case to now an amazing story.
Indeed.
Something special is happening now.
The Bemaru states have to pick up on.
So UP is changing, but others are not. But there's another question to this, because ladies and gentlemen, we are in that moment, okay? And that moment is when a new world is being formulated, okay? And that is happening in the new Cold War between the United States and China. So let me get Wing Commander Sudhakaran into this. Wing Commander Sudhakaran, now, we have just been told that after the space race, the new is the AI race, okay? And one side is going to throw $500 billion, okay? Okay, $500 billion. That is, ladies and gentlemen, 15% of India's GDP as it exists. They're going to throw in. The other side is saying, actually we just need $5 million, but then actually what's happened with this, DeepSeek, is that it's just a China propaganda machine and it's actually not panned out to what they said they did last week. But it is happening now in semiconductors. We are talking about a 70,000 crore, PLI. 70,000 crores is about $10 billion. The Americans are talking about a $200 billion semiconductor PLI. Okay. So how do we come into frontline tech for the future, Mr. Wing Commander?
Before coming directly to your questions, let me put things in perspective, and then I'll give 8 points from my side.
Please.
See, Modi is the only pillar of hope for me politically and otherwise for the country, because I simply don't have a viable alternative. That's my reality today. But the problem with the Modi Nirmala pair from a financial perspective is they are the Rohit and Virat Kohlis of our team. My biggest concern today is both are woefully out of form. They are not simply doing enough. What they are doing enough, either because of various constraints, which I do understand because of the freebie politics that are set in, the money that they have to divert to a lot of their schemes. I fully understand that, because there is no political survivability unless and until they do that, because people have become increasingly very transactional. They are looking at their 1,000 rupees and 500 rupees that they want month on month, and the middle class is clamoring for a reduction in the income tax. Where will the resources come from? So from that perspective, the government's stance is fully justified, but they can do some things which they are not doing. Before I begin, if your deep tech strategic consultancy is outsourced, and if the big fives are going to tell you what you need to do, let me tell you, they're not going to give you the right path. They're going to mislead you. Yeah. And that is consistently happening.
I agree.
Take, for example, the UP Defense Industrial Corridor and the Tamil Nadu Defense Industrial Corridor. Both are being consulted by the same big fives. What are we doing? Is it the dearth of talent? No. It is exactly the East India Company model, wherein a foreign military came here, employed your people, and they made you work against you. That's half of my course mates who went out of the forge are today employed by the big fives. They paid peanuts, but they extract. You go to the Bandra Kurla complex of Mumbai, you see the real estate price there, and all this is hogged by the big fives. Do you think that they're bringing money from abroad to be able to spend in here? No, they're extracting money from here. And we are simply not understanding that outsourcing strategic consultancy is not simply an option. That's the first biggest mistake.
Okay.
Both the
I've
national
just come out of
government is
interviewing with
conducting-
members of the Big Five, but okay. So, Wing Commander Sudhakaran, you don't like the consultants, you don't like the KPMGs and the Deloittes and all the others. Okay. But when it comes to us figuring out the realities ourselves, and we have got people like you, like me, people in government who say, yeah, this is the future, what can we actually do about it?
No, that is what I'm coming to. So the second point is, you can't have compliance holding businesses to a hostage. Today, it's a nightmare for me filling GST, filling the professional tax. You know, each of these web portals, half the time it doesn't work. If I click it, it goes into a permanent spin. It takes hours of my productive work. Can I have, forget your one nation, one poll. Can I have a one nation, one portal, one sign on and get my entire compliances on an itemized billing? Can you make your entire, you boast so much of digital stuff, but your basics of your MCA portal doesn't work. My directors whom had to be, reshuffled, I had to wait for 8 long months. The consequences when I go for funding, if I don't get these things in place, those things get delayed. You are wasting time of startups like me. You're killing them at the nascent stage. The third point, can we have a single converged portal for MSMEs? Even if I have to do a redressal of grievances, I'm given to understand it takes months together. It just simply doesn't work. GST, it can work for normal trading businesses, but startups don't get business month on month. The consequence is when I get a business, you need my 18% GST. But the next month when I spend, I don't get my input credit. Can you create a rolling credit wherein you take money from me when I sell, but you give me my money back when I buy? Now that will create a lot of liquidity into my business, which will enable me to spend more. Probably you will get more GST. These simple things are not simply understood. The fourth point that I will tell you, deep techs cannot get loans in India. And specifically, if you are in the software system, you just simply don't get any loan.
Why?
This
What's the problem?
bogey of Indian government that you get collateral-free loan, it just simply doesn't work. You go to SIDBI, they will tell you that you go and get venture capital funding first. They do the due diligence, and then I will come with my funding. Why do I need their funding? They simply are out of their minds, because when you say 500 billion is what Stargate program is involving, they don't understand that, first of all, you don't allow nascent funding to be coming to any startups. You are not, your policy, see, the bureaucrats who are sitting and making policies in air-conditioned rooms, they simply don't understand because they've never done business in their life. The problem with AI is when China made the DeepSeek, the minister got spooked and he came and he announced that in 8 to 10 months, I will make my own GPT. That's a joke. You have not started. 8 to 10 months is just simply out of question. You don't have the GPU infrastructure. Meta alone has 350,000 GPUs at its disposal.
Okay. So now just hold your thought, because I appreciate the fact that when you have issues, you're also giving suggestions, because otherwise then it's a vacuous conversation. So I appreciate you giving very pointed suggestions on what can be done. But let me get Mithali back into this. So Mithali, the themology seems to be, from what we just discussed, and it makes sense, the government can't make India grow at 8%. India's got to grow at 8%, and government primarily has to get out of the way.
Yes.
Government has a duty in distribution, in welfare, ensuring that everybody gets a fairer deal. That's government job, infrastructure, but beyond that, get out of the way. Are we getting out of the way fast enough?
No.
First of all, Rishabh, I completely agree with Sir, when he says that as a MSME owner myself, just paying a GST, I often have to pay my taxes even before my client has paid me. So, in many cases, I'm actually struggling for working capital.
It's the truth. I can tell you, this is the truth. It's the truth for us where I'm sitting. Your GST has to be paid as soon as you draw the bill, okay?
Yeah.
And the payment comes 6 months later. And I can't tell you what a problem that is for cash flow.
Exactly. So I think this is something, of course, as outside of the budget, but it has to be solved. That's the first thing. The second thing is that, of course, we have to see less government, even in social services and infrastructure. I mean, of course, government has no business doing business. But even in social services, we find that when you bring in public-private partnerships, even setting up like a daycare center, even setting up like a school or a health facility, even there, the government can play a very constructive role by empowering non-governmental organizations, by empowering community-based organizations, which are very rooted to the ground and are actually better and can provide those services cheaper. Government can fund them, but it can, deliver the services with those CBOs. This is something that we
but
need to
it's
see
not
more
all
of.
gloom and doom. Things have changed. We mentioned
No,
filing.
of course.
Filing income. I filed my income tax return this year. My return was not a lot of money. It was a very small sum of money, but I got it within 15 minutes. Even I could not understand what happened, because I got a message. Then I had to. My dad's a chartered accountant. I had to ask him what is this message, because something has gone wrong. But he said, no, this is your return has been credited. So I checked my account, it had received it. But I said, I just literally got the OTP to file the return, and now I got it. So something has gotten better. Passport filings, so these things are getting better. You are seeing these Aadhaar card, centers that are there that provide various government services. So you can go to one place, there's a guy on a computer, he'll help you sort out things, have gotten better. But Jayjeet, it is a conundrum I am not being able to easily resolve in my head, because I do see these things happening, but then it boils down to some X factor is missing. So what can the man who is directing this, who has said that I will deliver these things, he's delivered a lot of them, what's he got in the bag left? What ideas, what things can he do, or does he needs to do more of the same for longer?
Many people even before me has come out with the same point, and I was deeply involved in the ease of doing business, so I really know what went into it. The big things have been done. What we need to do is a whole series of small little things, and some which may not be that small. For example, fixing the whole patent system, which is a huge wealth generator if you can file the patents very easily. And it was an absolute mess in India. Now it is a complete charm to be able to go and file your own patent and get it within a reasonable period of time, even though it's still not world class. But we have moved from a completely draconian system to something which works and therefore adds value. And the reason I'm saying that is I'm adding to what Sudhakar just mentioned, that we are not able to, that startups are not able to get venture capital. The current Science and Technology Secretary, Dr. Abhay Karandikar, when he had a startup, he actually put his patents as a collateral and got funding from one of the private sector banks. And therefore, you see, these things take time to fall into place. You need to have a very good patent system in place. You need to then have the banking system respond. Similarly, within the government, the lower levels of bureaucracy needs to respond to what the government is doing. And the government has to understand that they're not responding. And therefore, the
Okay. My next question. Are the states responding?
Well, yes and no. I mean, many of the larger states are responding, as again, the panelist had mentioned. The Bimaru states are responding very well, for that matter. The large states like Maharashtra, Punjab, I'll take Punjab out, but Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, Karnataka, they are responding. Again, I would use the phrase "Dil chahta hai more," which was promoted by Captain Batra. We do need to do more.
And by Pepsi, of course, yes.
Yes, and we need to do it more and faster. Because, if we need to reach that 8% growth level, which is important for our population, which is still continues to grow, it has slowed down, but it's still growing. We need to meet the aspiration. And more importantly, there is a massive disruption in terms of technology that's coming in. So if we don't make things easier, how do we retrain our people? How do we create fast new opportunities which come in time without having social disruption? And the reason I'm using the word social disruption is that if there is large level of joblessness or underemployment, it will lead to social disruption. If suddenly I don't need the global capability centers, then a lot of high quality jobs get disrupted, and I don't need them because I can use AI to reduce the workforce by 90%. And that is what has been happening elsewhere. Now, GCCs contribute to about 8 to 9% of the GDP of the country. And that's going to be a huge hit. Millions and millions of people are employed.
Yeah, so every opportunity has a risk, right? So
Right.
Never
And so the point
before
that
in the history of humanity have so many people been in one place at one time. Never again in the history of humanity will so many people be in one place at one time. It's not going to happen again. India's population is about to peak. Therefore, global population is also about to peak because China is already declining. We are about to hit peak human population for the first time in the history of the earth. That a species like ours is about to peak in population. It's never happened. Our parents don't understand this, our grandparents, nobody, no generation, 100 years ago generation wouldn't understand it. But that's an opportunity and also threat because we have to find jobs for people. Bindu ji, I know this is a complex question because the data is confusing, because if you tell me there are no jobs available, I can tell you I've got jobs available, okay? And the people who come and apply for those jobs and want to do this and sit and do this, my job, sit in this chair and discuss the budget, cannot tell you what India's GDP is right now.
Absolutely.
Okay. So there are jobs and there are job seekers. The job creators, what have we done on that front?
First of all, Rishabh ji, we have to understand that first let me just may I deviate for 1 minute and go back to the my co-panelist of Q Gates Technology. Let's understand his angst. Which is very representative of what is happening on the ground. We cannot hold the private sector to just carry on increasing capacity till demand does not increase. They have done their fair bit. Yes, the government is right in saying that they have not parted with enough in terms of wages. But I think the private sector has done enough. They are working at 75% of capacity. And what more should they do till demand does not increase? Number two, I think to address the question, okay, we need to definitely give a fillip to employment intensive and labor intensive units. As also, the big elephant in the room is artificial intelligence, which can be a disruptor, which can also take up jobs. So we have to think on multiple lines as giving a fillip to champion sectors, which is green funding, EVs, all those things that will increase economic intensity. Most important, I would say, in a difficult year, we should not miss this opportunity to create something new, which is let's go past the fiscal deficit concerns. We are doing very well in conforming to the glide path, but in a difficult year, in the growth trajectory of a nation, when governments go past a little, there is no harm because a sovereign debt to ratio is not that bad. It's at 80% sovereign debt to GDP. And if we were to go past a little and spend a little more through infrastructure spending, which is anticipated to be at 11.11 lakh crores and 15% above that or 20% above that, it will have the highest multiplier
I won't say
effect.
consensus, but the majority view seems to be that, listen, for 2-3 months last year, because of elections and codes of conduct and things slowed down.
We could make that up, Rishabh ji, we could make that up. And secondly, one more thing, which is maybe it's time for us to think of our own DOGE, D-O-D-G-E, which is following the best practices in America. Maybe it'll be the best interface between industry and government, one. Number two, to see how
government, okay, not this one. To all credit to all the efforts that this government has made to do reform in the bureaucracy. Okay.
Yes, they have.
But I promise
all the
you,
same, much more can be
even
done.
this government just 2-3 weeks ago was telling us that the bureaucrats of this country need to be paid more, that their allowances need to go up, which they should. Of course, they should.
Definitely,
right?
but red tapeism must come down. Also, we're not just talking wages, sir. I mean, even
but
red
we are also in a country when one of the largest employers is government, if not the largest employer. The railways, the defense services, all remain the largest employers in this country. And a lot of people in North India still think the epitome of everything in life is a government job. It doesn't make a difference what the job is. So we are stuck between the old and the new. So let me just touch upon the new for a second, and let me go to Wing Commander. Wing Commander Sudhakaran, what is then? Now you mentioned the devil in the detail of the tweaks that need to be done, which will help. But in a larger scheme of things, okay, if we want to build an EV in this country, we don't have batteries, which is what the EV requires. We don't make the batteries here. We're starting to. If you really very seriously want to build an aircraft, you don't manufacture the engine. So if you want to build a supercomputer, you don't manufacture the chips. You want to build AI, well, you'll have to go to Taiwan for the GPUs. How do we address these? Something fundamental has to change there, no?
Let me tell you, Rishabh, as is properly believe, I don't believe AI is what is the story. It is AGI. Just get it corrected.
Yeah,
there's a huge difference between AGI
okay,
and
let me
AI.
qualify that for some people watching because it's really confusing. So, artificial intelligence, as we understand it, is basically LLM. That is basically a computer learning to talk like a human, but it has no brain. Artificial general intelligence is when it can actually think for itself. So that's the difference. So now go ahead.
If you look at the narrative of both DeepSeek and OpenAI and Tesla and Meta and Google, they're all behind the end goal of AGI. And believe you me, India doesn't have a doctrine, vision, even the understanding, let alone the budget. If you only know that I need to go there, then will I factor that in my scheme of things? You simply don't have a plan as a country. Yesterday, when DeepSeek was announced, the minister came online. He said, we'll make the LLM. The army called me. They said, we want, AI to be implemented for the armed forces. And when I heard their vision, at the cost of being politically incorrect, I had to tell them, your vision is simply like driving a car, seeing the rear view mirror. LLM is not the future. LLM will not take you anywhere forward. If you don't keep AGI as your end goal, the Stargate program that you're seeing for 500 billion is aimed at AGI. Now, let me tell you, your EV, your semiconductors, see, all this will become obsolete in no time the moment AGI singularity.
Okay, but Stargate has told us that this is not about genius. This is about muscle power. It's the number of GPU cores you can throw at the problem. That's what Stargate is telling. That's why they need $500 billion.
So what are they going to do with the GPU? The GPU is ultimately aimed at breaching the AGI singularity matrix, which means from the GPU clusters, it will enter into the quantum realm. The moment we are talking quantum, we are not talking about GPUs any longer. That is why Google's Willow achieves significance. That's why all these tech companies are invested both in quantum as well as in AI, not like what India is doing, wherein quantum is a silo in the quantum mission and AI is some LLM building detecting cats and dogs. That's where our vision is flawed. Okay. The second thing I'll tell you is the national strategy for AI was way back conceived in 2018 by the Niti Aayog, and it was a shame in the name of strategy. After that, 2019, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, no strategy on AI whatsoever. Suddenly somebody came and hijacked, and we now talk about ethics, we talk about governance, we talk about standards. Arey tere plate mein kuch hai nahi, tum kis cheez ka ethics bana rahe ho?
So we are making.
First of all, get the design straight.
Okay, all right.
You don't have a design doctrine.
So there are examples. You can Google a company called Perplexity.ai, okay, which has done very well for itself. But what Wing Commander Sudhakaran is saying, and which is true, the LLMs are actually doing nothing. Okay, we can't really find a use case for them. How many of you are actually using the LLMs? The answer is none, zero. Okay, so it's a curiosity, but use case, even OpenAI is finding it difficult to find use cases. They're trying to make agents now, and it's not really working. But the goal of artificial general intelligence, which is in theory would be something special. But then Jayjeet, let me come in on that, because I'll ask the contrarian question for the point of argument. A few years ago, we were told the next big thing is this new concept that has come, on which we have overlaid cryptocurrency, that there can be packets of information that can be universally noded. Okay? Then we were told that no, the next best thing is that all of us are going to be wearing headsets and be logged into a metaverse, and billions and billions of dollars will be poured into creating this cartoon metaverse, and all that money went up in smoke. Okay, it all disappeared. Crypto was not the future. We could not find a use case for it. Nobody's really using any of these technologies for a solid use case. Metaverse, I don't know what happened to it. It disappeared because even Zuck is now talking about AI. He's not talking about metaverse anymore. So is there a contrarian argument that it might just be a pipe dream?
No, there's a mix and match. For example, LLM is actually being widely used by consulting. In fact, we are using a mix of LLM and the APIs of LLM to do very, very deep work for the government for specific areas.
Can you give me an example? Because I'll tell you my problem. If I can't trust an LLM because it is dependent on parsing data and it's 95% accurate, because I can't use it because that 5% inaccuracy is enough for me not to be able to trust it.
So let me explain it from a consulting perspective. The government part, I can't.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But the consulting part is very simple. Is that the first cut of reports were actually made by people who are straight out of college, and that was a mechanism for them to also get trained.
Correct.
They would basically go to Google and all the reports and all internal information and put together the first cut. It takes a lot of effort to get the first cut out, because then the senior managers can come in and put their knowledge onto it and fix it.
Yes.
What has happened is that the first level of this work is gone because LLMs do a much better job.
Okay.
If you can ask the right things, it'll put things together, and then the senior manager comes in directly. So the efficiency has gone up significantly. The time is crunched. The effort needed is much
Okay,
lesser.
but what is the lesson? And I'm sorry, I'm going off track because we've got 5 minutes left, but this is a fascinating conversation. What's the lesson that you're absorbing from DeepSeek? Because DeepSeek tells you that the Communist Party is the salt of the earth.
So let me take one more example before I get into that. What we are doing also is, for example, there is a NewsX YouTube video, and there are hundreds of them.
Yeah.
I want to find out that YouTube video that I'm really interested in, where you discuss something specific for me.
Fair enough.
I can't see hours and hours of video. I let the AI watch it, transcript it, and then give me the summary pointing out which are the possible videos. And obviously the hallucination and the misrates that you mentioned are all there, but it reduces my problem. Right? And therefore the efficiency goes up. In terms of, I just missed the question that you mentioned.
Yeah, so I'll just add on to it. So the latest thing from OpenAI, which was literally last week, so it was a few days before DeepSeek, okay, was that they are now enhancing agents, and the agents are now going to be working by using AI in your computer, taking screenshots. All right, so you will have an agent on, and you will tell the agent to book a movie ticket, okay, and it is going to look at your computer screen and interface. It's going to use its thinking abilities to say, okay, which is the button that takes me to book the ticket, by looking at the screen and analyzing the screen. And therefore, because you can do it at a high rate of computation, it's pretty real time. So this is where they are at in finding use cases. Beyond that, your co-pilot and all of this, they're all buttons. It's quirky. 10 years ago, having a smart home device was supposed to be the future. I promise you that Amazon is doing cutbacks in its Alexa program. They're sacking people there. They're reducing their staff force because they spent billions and it hasn't turned out to be what it's supposed to be. That I go home and I tell my assistant, please cook me Maggie, and it somehow happens, or order my milk. It hasn't happened. But okay, couple of minutes away from the speech, Mithali, we were talking about AI. And we are talking about, if the Americans are throwing $500 billion at the problem, what do we do?
So firstly, Rishabh, I just want to weigh in on one aspect that we've been discussing about AI, and which Jayjeet just mentioned about, senior management and junior, employees. And this relates actually to employability and a larger challenge that we have to create jobs. Because at the end of the day, if our junior staff, and you also mentioned this, you have jobs, you have job seekers, but maybe they don't have the skills that you require. So clearly we are entering an era where we will be hiring people with greater amount of training. We will not be able to hire a fresh graduate out of college or even a postgraduate. Maybe we will want that postgraduate or even a PhD to have then done some tech training to be able to use different AI tools which apply to our
No, so hold your thought, because I'll give you a real example. My first job in a TV organization, okay, NDTV it was, my first job was transcribing interviews, okay.
Yeah.
Now that AI can do pretty well, not 10%. So they are, for example, they are not good enough for me as a professional. I can't use it because it's not it'll get Jayjeet's name spelling wrong, for example, okay. So it's not 10%, so it's not publishable grade. It's not good enough for me. But in 100 different use cases, it's more than good enough because it gets the point across very reasonably. So yes, so that's an example. Mithali, finish your thought.
Yeah, so basically that's what I'm talking about, Rishabh, that we will have to invest not only in creating AI infrastructure, and right now we are talking about an AI race, but we will also have to look at our population, because our population, the youth population of India, is not only the workforce of India, but the workforce of the world. These are people who can be going abroad, who can go and actually work in these AI companies, whether it's in the US more likely or even in China. So in order to do that, we have to think about skill training them and about creating curriculums, modules, and training, software.
Okay, but that's the point where I don't want to burst anybody's bubble. But we saw DeepSeek, okay, and oh my God, the news was $5 million. Just in a few weeks, these guys have beaten OpenAI and they've killed it, #1 downloaded app. And then we found out a few days later that the app is telling you that the Communist Party is the representation of God on humanity, and then they're so nice people, and then China is perfect and it's such a happy place. And then you realize DeepSeek is as good as the data has been fed, and the data has been fed is all censored data of the Communist Party. Try and ask DeepSeek 5 problems with China and it can't answer it because there are no problems in China according to it. So that's also AI. So is it, are we just, are these billionaires just, doing frontline technology, or are they just taking us up a garden path? Mithali, are these guys just taking us up a garden path? Because I'm a little bit skeptical,
So, but Rishabh, there was a very interesting use case that was talked about I was speaking to a friend from a tech company about it, and she was talking about the fact that in the future, the idea is to create customized agents, right? Which you also spoke about.
Yeah.
Training your AI to be able to be like a clone for you. I'm actually training an AI clone of myself who can actually, not maybe come on the news, but at least dictate and guide my team on how to work for our client work. So, these are agents which are being created by, tech companies, even smaller tech companies, and will replace humans. The other thing is not only about AI. I also want to talk about automation, because we have not spoken about that enough. But in the manufacturing sector, I have been visiting so many plants and factories, even in India. Leave aside the dark factories of China, but even in India, we are starting to see greater and greater reliance on machinery like conveyor belts. These are very basic machineries which had not come into Indian factories before, but they are now coming in, and these are labor replacing technologies.
Yeah.
There's no way to say that, we should go into only labor intensive manufacturing. We have to go into a combination mode where our workers
this conundrum has been there since literally for 1947. Okay.
Yes, since the Luddite movement.
So do you want the weaver to do it like Gandhi and do the charkha because that provides him employment, or do you want to be competitive and actually have a electronic machine do it? So I'm out of time. I want to take last few words as we just see Nirmala ji is starting off. Parliament session will be starting any second. Wing Commander Sudhakaran, on that AI point, without throwing, we are going to hear some announcement for sure. Okay, it's the newsy moment. Government is going to do some announcement on AI. What will actually be a useful one?
Rishabh, before getting into that answer, I'll quickly 30 seconds to correct some of the things that have been quoted here. LLM has got large use scale and it has been extensively used. For example, in the tech industry, if my developers were involving in 100 hours of development yesterday pre-LLM, today they are doing it less than 10 hours. Any code debugging, LLM does it so flawlessly.
Okay,
in fact,
I'm going to stop you there. So the speech has started. Let's listen in.
सदस्यगण, बजट के बाद राज्यपाल अभिभाषण में आपको पर्याप्त अवसर दूंगा। मेरा आपसे निवेदन है, नहीं माननीय अखिलेश जी, आपने संसद की मर्यादा को आप बना के रखें। कभी बजट भाषण के अंदर इस तरीके का नहीं हुआ, ये उचित नहीं है, ये उचित नहीं है। अखिलेश जी प्लीज, मैं आपको मौका दूंगा राज्यपाल अभिभाषण पे, प्लीज। नो, ये तरीका ठीक नहीं है। नो, राज्यपाल अभिभाषण पर चर्चा होगी। नो तरीका।
Honorable Speaker, I present the budget for 25-26. This budget continues our government's efforts to A. Accelerate growth, B. Secure inclusive development, C. Invigorate private sector investments, D. Uplift household sentiments, and E. Enhance spending power of India's rising middle class. Together, we embark on a journey to unlock our nation's tremendous potential for greater prosperity and global positioning under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. As we complete the first quarter of the 21st century,